This channel is part of the History Hit network.
This slope could once have been part of an ancient capital in a rather unlikely place, the Ely housing estate here in South Wales. The hill is called Caerau. It's pretty mysterious and no one's ever dug it before, but it may well once have been a vital fortress for the Welsh tribes who lived here 2,000 years ago. This mighty fort built on a hill may have been the centre of power for this entire region.
I'm really excited about it, Tony.
Untouched by spade or trowel for centuries, will we be the first to unravel its secrets?
So I'm hoping...
Whoa!
That's a little clearer for you.
Oh, I can't believe it.
It's down to our team of archaeologists to solve the mystery of this hill. Could this be the long-lost capital of South Wales? And if it is, will we be able to find it in 3 days? See, the thing about long-lost places is you never quite know what you're going to find, do you?
Well, so here we are, Phil. This is our hill fort.
There's nothing quite like it, is there? You're walking up through the entrance of a hill fort with ramparts towering up on either side of it. Absolutely immense.
You know, it's a big hill fort. It's one of the biggest in South Wales. You know, it's a major centre.
Yeah, but the thing is, Neil, it's big, so we've got to get cracking.
Absolutely.
Come on. Oh,
Now
come on, Phil.
ordering.
Also making their way up to the fort are our geophysics team. Their task to survey this vast hilltop in search of an ancient tribal centre that may lie hidden here.
Oh, wow. You wouldn't have thought it was this open up here when you're clambering up the ramparts,
No,
would
you wouldn't. So this is about 5 hectares.
That's 10 football pitches in old money, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Caerau, which means forts in Welsh, overlooks Cardiff, capital of modern Wales. Built atop this massive hill, trees now cover the spectacular earthworks that give our site the classic profile of an Iron Age hill fort. But more than that, its size and commanding position suggest that it could have been the old capital and busy hub for the Welsh clans of the area. Time Team site director Francis Pryor has seen what he believes could be an Iron Age ditch, and it's got him very excited.
If you love history, then you'll love History Hit. We have tons of exclusive documentaries about the most important people in history that you will not find anywhere else. Our extensive catalogue of documentaries covers everything from the rise of Hannibal Barca to the illustrious treasures of King Tut. So sign up today for broadcast quality documentaries uncovering the mysteries of the ancient world. Not only that, but we have a huge podcast network releasing new episodes every day, so you'll always have something to listen to. Sign up now for a free trial, and Odyssey fans get 50% off their first 3 months. Just be sure to use the code Odyssey at checkout.
I mean, look, you really see it's incredibly clear over there, isn't it?
It's really nice ditch.
Oh, I mean, see the
On your back.
Francis, you're the boss this week. Is this place really as mysterious as it's cracked up to be?
Well, I don't think it's mysterious, Tony, so much as unexplored. You know it's a hill fort.
It's a hill fort, so it is Iron Age then?
Yes, it's Iron Age. That gives us a lot of time to play with. You know, is it started at the beginning, you know, 600, 500 BC, or has it started much later, 300, 200? It could be, either one.
What sort of thing are we expecting to find?
Well, what we're looking for, Tony, is where people actually lived. I mean, that's our main objective. But initially, we want to find the earliest feature on the site. And I think our best bet lies really just down there in that ditch. I mean, you can see it as clear as anything.
We're going to do the geophys first, though, surely?
We don't need geos.
Francis, 20 years of Time Team, we geophys and then we dig the trench.
We are going to be doing a trench here.
Hang on a second, you've got a cane here.
Yeah, and
And one right over there where you are. This is a zonking great trench.
It's a zonking great ditch.
Yeah, the thing is, Tony, we've got to get on and dig it.
Yeah.
So would you mind please going somewhere else?
Oh yeah, blame me, won't you? You and the three of you were just wandering around in the grass. The temptation to dive straight in at Caerau is too much for any red-blooded archaeologist to resist. This huge site could date back to the beginning of the Iron Age in Wales, as early as 800 years BC. If this was an Iron Age capital, our ancestors would have lived here in large numbers and left evidence behind. Ditches are a good place to look for artefacts that have rolled in or been thrown away. Francis is convinced the curving ditch he's digging is Iron Age. The turf's barely off, and it looks like he could be right.
Very often what happens with Iron Age ditches, you have collapse over the years coming in, and so, I mean, your actual edge of that ditch is what? Twice as far back as we reckoned?
Yeah.
It's very encouraging, you know, nice wide ditch, natural appearing over there, bank. It's just what we expected.
Clues to the importance of this site lie all around us. Ramparts. The massive banks and ditches that surround this hill. They're part of what's always drawn Iron Age specialist Neil Sharples to Caerau. For years, he's been dying to dig here. We've been talking blithely about this place being a hill fort, but we haven't actually said what a hill fort is, have we?
No, it's, well, it's a difficult question. That's why we're probably been avoiding it.
Well, it's a hill and it's a fort, right?
Well, maybe. It's definitely on a hill. What do you mean by a fort?
Well, somewhere where there are soldiers, somewhere where there are defensive structures. We can see that there are ramparts here, can't we? So what were these ramparts for?
Well, I think at a simple level, they're creating an enclosure that defines and gives identity to the people who live within it.
Defining a community seems like a bit hippy-dippy to me.
Well, no, it's people in the period before this, in the Bronze Age, people were living in small farmsteads in the fields, in the landscape. The end of the Bronze Age, there's a major transformation, and people gather together at these places, probably quite special places, and then they surround themselves in these ramparts and ditches.
But why would you define yourself in such an incredibly military way?
Well, it's not necessarily a military way, that's the way you look at it. I'd be very, very surprised if we found a spear inside this hill fort, or any weapon.
You're making it sound like something built by social services. Look, just because it took a lot of people to build it, it doesn't mean that it was a community project, does it?
It's a big statement of a sense of belonging, and it's a sense of pride, community pride. We are a community who's strong, vibrant. We've got lots of resources, we've got lots of manpower. You know, we can build a major, impressive monument that's going to really put all our neighbours into the shade. They're going to look at our ramparts and say, gosh, that's impressive. I don't want to tangle with them. They are a really important group of people.
The geophysics team is using magnetometry to survey Caerau. It's a technique that uses magnetic waves to locate disturbances deep in the soil. We're looking for circular features, traces of Iron Age roundhouses that may have lain buried for more than 2,000 years. Francis has asked the team to survey a strip running across the middle of the hill fort. If there really were lots of people living here in the Iron Age, there should be evidence in the geophys. And the first set of results are already in.
This is what we've got. Now, we did have a bit of a wish list this morning, which was going to be lots of archaeology, possibly some ring ditches.
Yep.
So how many of your wishes have you fulfilled?
Not quite as many as you'd have hoped, I'm afraid.
Like none?
Yeah, we're verging on that. It's up for debate.
Francis, you wanted roundhouses.
Yes, I did. Yes, it's not exactly Iron Age London, is it?
Not really.
I mean, am I imagining something, or is that something there? Tell me there is something there. Tell me, come on, Jimmy. Tell me there's something there.
All right, yes, there is something curving through there.
Well, can you drop us in on that?
I think I can manage it.
Yeah. Okay, let's go for it.
It's not much to go on, but then Iron Age archaeology isn't for the faint-hearted or the short-sighted. Roundhouses, the typical homes of the period, were made of wood, mud and thatch, and after long centuries rotting in the ground, there's not much left to see. While Phil's opening up Trench 2, back at our first trench, Francis is hoping his archaeologist's gut instinct has been proved right. If this really turns out to be an Iron Age ditch, it'll help us date the hill fort.
Oh, I think we've got a ditch there.
Yep, no problem.
So that's your ditch, Matt. It's not exactly defensive, is it?
No.
Yeah.
The grey silt that we thought was the ditch fill actually is the top of this natural boulder clay here. So we carried on back this way, and you can see the dark ditch fill there.
Oh, it's really clear.
Lovely edge there, and it goes all the way to here.
How deep do you think it's going to be?
I mean, I've been nibbling away at the edge along here, and it's going at about 45 degrees, so you may be talking maybe half a metre deep, if it follows that.
And no fines, anything like that?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, the fill of this ditch is really solid. It's almost the same as the clay there, so I think it is very compacted and very old. But the proof is really going to be in the excavation, isn't it?
Yeah, it will. Get cracking.
At the base of this hill fort is Ely, the biggest housing estate in Cardiff. Unaware that an ancient capital might be in their backyard, some of the Ely residents have turned up hoping to find out something about this place.
So what's it like having this fantastic ancient site right on your doorstep?
Like, didn't even know about it really.
I know, it was
you?
quite like hidden because not many people knew about it being here, and like after all this, a lot of people know about it now.
Over the next few days, we're hoping to tell the local people if and when Caerau was occupied and exactly what was going on up here. So we better hurry up and find something. One of the archaeologists just called me over and said, there's a house in Trench 2, a house in Trench 2. So I came over here and look, there's swathes of brown soil and a few stones dotted around. Where's your flipping house, mate?
Actually, I couldn't have put it better myself, Tony. There are swathes of brown soil, but it really takes the eyes of a skilled archaeologist to actually pick out what's in the trench.
Well, we've only got you here.
Well, I'm going to have to do then, aren't I? Look, if you remember, that when you looked at the geophysics, do you remember there was that curving thing which we thought was probably the wall line of the roundhouse? Well, we think we've actually located that in this trench. The giveaway is you've got one edge coming along there. You can see on this side, it's somewhat grittier. And then in here, it's clayer. And you've got the other edge coming around here and swinging round in this direction. And we think that that is either the foundation of a roundhouse or maybe a drip gully.
We're looking for a huge community, aren't we?
Yes, but huge communities live in houses.
Yeah.
If we're right in thinking that this is our house, we are beginning to actually get a grip of that community.
It is all a bit tenuous, isn't it?
It is not tenuous, you old cynic.
If this was a capital packed with people, we really need to find their houses and date them. Francis thinks that dwellings next to the ramparts could be better preserved, because over time, soil tumbles down onto the houses, protecting them from later ploughing. Jim!
Afternoon.
Got any more results for us?
Certainly have. You'll remember, Francis, that after this morning's efforts, we were sort of grasping at straws, hopefully.
Whoa!
Is that better? Is that more what you were after?
Right. Oh, I can't believe it. We got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5...
What?
6 roundhouses, I guess, there.
Optimistic, but I'm with you. Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you, Jimmy. I think that is...
And you may change your mind overnight, but at first glance, where do you reckon you'd want to dig tomorrow?
Well, obviously, go for that roundhouse. It's obviously in such good condition.
10 minutes ago, we had a drip tray, and now we've got practically a whole civilization. Well, we'll have to prove it to find out, won't we? And that means digging tomorrow. Beginning of day 2 here in South Wales, and yesterday we spent the whole day searching for some signs of Iron Age life in this empty field and found virtually nothing at all until round about 5:30 p.m. Jimmy from Geophysics came up with that. Isn't that beautiful? Lots of interesting linears and circles and mysterious shapes. For an archaeologist, this is just about as much fun as you can have with your clothes on. So how are you going to start your fun-filled day, mate?
Well, we've got a dream site here, Tony. Look, the Geophys has shown up a row of houses snuggled up against the back of the ramparts, which is what you often find on hill forts. And then look at that one. That's the best preserved of them all. So we're putting a trench in that from the front door, which is here. So we're going to do that half there.
But you think these aren't the only roundhouses here, don't you?
Yeah, I think there's another row running along here. There's certainly one there. There's another one in there. Another one there. Another one there. I'm quite happy. I think that's a row of houses.
It's so funny because yesterday I was really taking the mickey out of you for this idea that this was an Iron Age community rather than an actual military fort. But if you've got 2 rows of houses like that, that is the beginning of a community,
Yeah,
getting a community.
I'm happy. I think it proves what I was saying was right. And, you know, we've got a community here. I mean, if you count them up, I mean, we've got at least 5 on this row, 5 or 6 in this row. You know, we've got at least 10 houses. 8 to 10 people in a family.
Yep.
So, you know, that's
1,800 people.
Yeah.
And that's just one corner of our field.
That's one corner, yeah.
Excellent.
So, you know, I'm really happy. I think that's...
But we've got to find something, Tony. We haven't found anything yet.
We have.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
found
We found burnt limestone.
stone.
Yeah, OK.
Well,
Well,
burnt stone.
Yeah.
We're quite excited.
We're quite.
Only an archaeologist could get that excited about this amount of burnt stone. The burnt limestone, together with our stunning geophys results, have convinced Francis that he's found an area that was very densely populated by Iron Age standards. It could be the first step to proving that Caerau was a very important site. But the minute the topsoil's off, disagreement follows. Geophysics head John Gator thinks he can see the marks of the roundhouse in the ground. But Francis is convinced that the jagged edges they're seeing were caused by Ice Age glaciers 10,000 years ago.
There's a feature there at the very end. That's showing up nice and clearly. That's a proper feature. It's got pottery on it. There's nothing in there which is archaeological, honest. Look at the edge of that, John. See the way it wavers?
Yeah.
Like that. That's cut by ice.
I think that is the ditch of the roundhouse, and that's the break, that's the entrance there. So the green is the edge of the trench where we're standing.
Yeah.
And that anomaly there is that anomaly, and you're saying that's glacial.
Yeah.
And so it's pure coincidence that is at the end of that ring.
Yeah.
Well, I don't believe you.
You don't?
No. Well, I'll take my hat off to you, if it is.
No, it is, John, it is. There is no archaeology there, take my word for it. So we'll have to come back here then. And then once we've found it, we can follow it if we want. But I think the key thing now is to find it, because we're lost until we do.
If Francis is right, we haven't got our roundhouse yet, but he's not giving up. He's now extending the trench to try and find it.
I'm wasting my time.
We know next to nothing about this site, and very little about the Iron Age in this part of Wales, except that it lasted for 800 years. But there are clues about the nature of the people who lived in the area, and perhaps on our hill fort itself. It's a beautiful map, isn't it? It looks like Middle Earth.
It's a cracker and it does a bit, doesn't it?
What does it represent?
Well, what it's showing us is the Iron Age tribes of Wales, or at least it shows us how the Romans described the Iron Age tribes of South Wales. We have a wonderful account from the Roman historian Tacitus, and he gives us this picture, and this is a nice sort of representation of that.
Where are we?
We're just here. This is Caerau.
So we're deep in the heart of these people, the Silures.
Absolutely in the heartland of the Silures, that's right.
What do we know about the Silures?
The Romans tell us quite a bit about them, in some detail about the ferocious resistance that the Silures mounted to the Roman advance, a 25-year guerrilla war.
What do you think is the relationship between our hill fort and the Silures' defence of their own territory generally?
Well, it could be quite important because it's big. in the scheme of things and in the terms of South Wales, it's one of the bigger hill forts. And I think that we really should be thinking of the Silures as a sort of a clan-based tribal confederation. So you will have had important regional centres, and it may well be that we're stood in the middle of one of them here at Caerau.
We've now got 3 trenches up and running in our search for houses and finds. So far, Matt's ditch trench has given us nothing, but help is now at hand.
Oh, got some reinforcements, mate.
Thanks, how many have you got?
Huh?
How many have you got?
Oh, a few.
Right. The kids from Ely are coming to dig in our trenches. Maybe they'll bring us good luck.
There's still a bit of cleaning to do in there on all that muddy clay, and then we'll get into the features and see if we can find some really good stuff.
You are going to get so muddy. Is that a problem?
No.
Not for you two?
No.
Great. Get stuck in then, off you go.
So, trowels on the ground, facing that way. Press down and pull, scrape, scrape, scrape. That's it.
Matt and Rakshar don't have any trouble putting them all to work. Nothing like a bit of slave labour to move this excavation along.
Yeah, watch your toes. That's it.
But
yeah,
who
just the
were
weight-
these ancestors that our kids are digging for? We know they spoke an ancient Celtic language, and we know that this language became modern Welsh. And they've left behind colourful everyday objects, some of which are kept in the National Museum of Wales.
Hi, Ashley and Kaya. Right.
We're taking 2 of our diggers, Ashley and Kaya, both Ely born and bred, to see them.
But you need to put your gloves on.
Caerau hasn't given us any finds yet, but some of these Iron Age artefacts were found close to our fort.
This stuff is 2,000 years old. These objects here are all from one hoard. They were all found together.
People have actually brought things together, deposited them, put them into the ground, maybe as a sort of a ritual act, giving them to the gods. And a lot of these hoards from this part of the world, they relate to horses. So I think we can say horses were really important to these people. And if you can imagine, you know, big carts, chariots, with those things mounted in the horse trappings, you know, would have been really colourful. And that really does say something about how sophisticated they were. And I think that's important for us to remember.
Can you see this over here? What's this? No.
That's a Iron Age pint in it.
Big mug, isn't it? A tankard.
It's the right idea, yeah. I think it's a little bit more than a pint.
Yeah, about 4 pints. 4 pints. That's a lot. And I think the idea is, isn't it, Ray, that they used to share these?
I think you'd want to share that round a bit. Yeah, it might be a bit much otherwise.
These precious objects tell us that the Iron Age people from this area lived lives full of ritual and colour. To get a sense of how challenging it was to make objects like this, we're going to make our own communal drinking cup to discover a bit more about Iron Age technology.
No, that's
Cassie is going to help metalworker Dave Chapman make a bronze handle for the cup, and the process starts by getting metal from stone.
This is going to sound like a bit of a stupid question, but this is the Iron Age, so why bronze?
Well, they're using the bronze quite extensively as a decorative metal. It's a really beautiful metal that takes lovely shapes, and you can cast bronze, whereas you can't cast iron. So you can get really nice decorative shapes. So any shape you can make in wax, you can then cast into bronze.
Bronze is an alloy of copper and tin. Locally mined malachite is a good source of copper ore. But to extract or smelt the pure copper, we need more than just heat.
It's actually about creating carbon monoxide, which is bonding with the copper with the carbon in the stone, creating carbon dioxide and copper metal. So we're forcing a chemical reaction to take place.
Whether you're smelting now or 2,000 years ago, extracting metal from ore is a complex process.
That's it, right.
Dave's using raw material from the local environment, in this case turf from our trenches, to control the gases inside the furnace. The carbon monoxide reacts with the ore, separating it into pure copper and the waste product, slag.
Oh, there we go. Looks like we've got some on the bottom there.
Oh, is it this sort of, that bit there?
Yeah, that looks like a blister copper.
It's very solid.
Excellent. So what we'll do, we'll put it in the water.
At this stage, the copper is still attached to the slag.
Oh, lovely.
Really
there we have.
solid, isn't it?
After cooling, the copper can be knocked out.
There you go.
Loads of solid stuff.
It's a big effort for a small amount of copper. We've got a lot of work to do before we're ready to cast our bronze handle. The cup is underway, but it would be great to find a real Iron Age artefact. And it looks like Francis's first hunch about where to dig was a good call. Francis, the whole field is abuzz with archaeologists saying that at last we've got a significant find. Is this it?
It is, Tony, and it is a cracker of a find. I am really excited about it.
It looks just like a piece of rock to me.
Well, it is a piece of rock, Tony. It would have been a much larger piece of rock. This is a quern. It's a corn grinding stone. One of the things about these querns, right, is that they were quite sophisticated bits of kitchen equipment.
Go
on. This would have been part of a much larger thing. So this is the top stone. I mean, there'd been another one at the bottom on which it would have rested like that. And then you pour this grain through that groove there, which is actually a hole.
Oh, you can really see that curved shape in there, can't you?
So that goes in there, and it goes to meets the bottom stone, and then you can see, look, there's another groove there, and then that distributes the grain as it grinds, and then after I don't know, a couple of generations of use, planes of weakness develop, and then eventually everything cracks, and they say something rude in Iron Age and throw it into the ditch.
But why are you so excited about this? I mean, it is, frankly, just a broken thing in the bottom of a ditch.
I'll tell you why. This tells us that there were people actually living here.
Yeah.
They were making flour in the houses, which were probably just over there. So it's very, very important. Now, Matt, where exactly did you find it? This is important to get this right.
It was just on the bottom of the ditch, just about there.
And why is that so significant?
Well, as you can see, it's a big thing, and it was found right at the bottom of the ditch. So I don't think it was something that was lying around but accidentally slipped in. I think this was thrown in there with rubbish. So it has to date the ditch.
Matt, you know why he's so triumphant? This is his trench that he stuck in before Geophys, and it's turned up trumps. You're bang on the money.
Yes, it's really been good, Tony. I'm really excited about it, Tony.
This brilliant late Iron Age find dates our ditch. And it's proof that Iron Age people were grinding corn here at Caerau. And where people were grinding corn, they were very likely to be living and even farming in the surrounding landscape. But to prove that this place was some sort of Iron Age capital, we need evidence of large numbers of people living here. And that means finding plenty of roundhouses. Yet halfway through our time here, there's still no definitive evidence of a single one. The pressure's on. We're at Caerau Hill Fort in South Wales, a massive unexplored site. We're looking for evidence that this place was once some sort of Iron Age capital. We're halfway through day 2, and even though we've got this fantastic geophys, quite frankly, what's been coming out of some of our trenches has been less than inspiring. So we're putting in trench 4 here over the oval enclosure, which you can see on the geophys. And this is right at the entrance to the whole Iron Age hill fort. So hopefully we'll get something here that's pretty exciting. We've already put in 3 trenches to try and get a sense of how many people may have lived here and when. With the help of the local kids from Ely, we've found a single late Iron Age corn grinding quern, which points to it being a domestic site. But so far on this giant hilltop, we've found no houses. It's been a while since I've caught up with Phil. He's always firmly believed he's got a roundhouse in his trench, but is he any closer to proving it?
Phil! Tea, about time too.
Yeah, tea's up, mate.
OK, clear up your loose, we'll have a cup of tea.
Give me some good news, mate. I've been looking around the other trenches. You can't see a thing.
You're so negative. You want something positive?
Yes, please.
Well, I can positively tell you that that ring ditch, that foundation gully or whatever it was, is not a foundation gully or a ring ditch.
I thought you were going to give me some good news.
But I am. I'm going to be really, really positive. I can say positively that we do have a building in this trench.
And where is the building?
Well, it's actually in front of you. Where Kelly is, you see she's got digging a post hole there.
Yeah.
Now, about a foot behind her feet, there is a grey patch. There's another post hole there. We've got another one, look, there's a grey patch there with another post hole, and that all ties in with this feature that I'm digging here. Now, I've measured them up. The distances between them are the same. The distances that way are the same. They form a regular rectangle. Now, whether or not that's a rectangular building or part of something round, I don't really know. Is that positive enough for you?
That's positive. Francis.
Yes, sir.
We've got a building here.
Brilliant.
Mind you, it is a struggle finding anything here.
It is incredibly difficult to see any forms of features in this brown soil.
Well, that's not to be wondered at. The thing is, Phil, 10,000 years ago, this was glaciated.
Yep.
There were glaciers down
Yep.
here, frozen. And every time the ice froze, it would open up wedges in the ground, and it would bring the clay up from below, and it would mess around with the natural, and that's why it's a dog's breakfast.
All right, don't give us a lecture. Just drink your tea.
Well, where is my tea?
Gordon Bennett.
Oh, never mind Gordon Bennett. Where's my tea?
There's your tea,
oh,
sir.
Look, please take
Oh,
the
I'm
tea
so
bag.
sorry.
Positive thinking is all very well, but the reality is that Phil's trench remains inconclusive. Our building could be round, could be rectangular, could be Iron Age, but we've got no finds and no date. It's game over at Trench 2. But it's not time to give up on Caerau just yet, and we've also got a replica Iron Age drinking cup to make. Dave has added a small amount of tin to the copper we smelted earlier and is melting them in a crucible to make bronze. It's almost ready to pour into moulds which contain wax replicas of the handles at the Cardiff Museum. So is it ready, Dave?
Getting there now. Yeah, it's good and hot from over here. I always think this is a very magical process.
It must have seemed so then, mustn't it?
Must have done, mustn't it? Even after thousands of years, you still get excited by it.
Yeah.
Thousands of pores.
You can imagine that the people who did it must have had really high status in the community.
I should think so, yeah.
And kept very quiet about how you actually did it.
Yeah. Our bronze is now ready to pour into the moulds to create classic Iron Age style handles. Fantastic colour, isn't it? How long before it'll cool down?
Oh, about 10 minutes, something like that. You can see the bronze has a consistency of chocolate in this at this temperature.
Oh, yeah.
Good, good. There you go, Tony. Perhaps you'd like to do the honours and knock it out.
With this side?
But gently.
Yeah, gently, because it's
gently.
very pretty.
Oh, yeah, it is fragile, isn't it?
There's our casting. Yeah, can you see the edge of the castings there? That's
Yeah,
where
yeah,
the
yeah.
nails go.
A quick wash and brush up, and the handles are very nearly there. Here we are. Probably around 2,000 years since something like this was made on this site. "2,000 years ago, Caerau would have looked very different. Tree cover is hiding its most dramatic features. Its ramparts can only be seen using modern LiDAR techniques, which involve firing laser pulses from a plane at the site. These allow us to see through the trees and reveal the giant banks and ditches. Whether, as Neil has always believed, they were for showing off or were defensive, the one thing these ramparts definitely do is ensure people enter through the front door. Francis put Trench 4 over the feature at the entrance to see if it's a part of our Iron Age story.
Oh yeah, you've nearly bottomed that in, haven't you?
Oh yeah, Francis. Yeah, what I've got the sides now.
Yeah.
And these stones are lying on the side, and the bottom's probably underneath these stones down here.
Fantastic. I mean, those stones strike me very much as if they're in situ. They're placed there almost.
Oh yeah, they're not tumbled in. I mean, these have definitely been placed on the sides of the ditch all the way round. There's one behind me as well.
What sort of date is this?
Well, we've got two bits of pot out of this. We've got one which is almost certainly Roman, that one there. That's out of the top.
Yeah, this is Roman, isn't it? It's fairly hard and fairly fresh.
And then we've got this very delicate handmade piece there.
Yeah, that looks Iron Age. And the Roman one's nice and fresh, and this is fairly weathered. That's been lying around on the surface, hasn't it?
Almost certainly, yes.
Yeah, well, that leads me to think that this is almost certainly Roman, wouldn't you agree?
It's looking that way, and interestingly, I mean, we've got also what look like two post holes here, either side of the entrance.
So they could be gate posts?
Could be gate posts or maybe fence posts.
Yep, it's looking more and more like a Roman farm. But of course, when we say Roman, we actually mean the Romans would be actually the same people as were here in the Iron Age, just wearing Roman clothes.
Yeah, Romano-Welsh.
Romano-Welsh, yeah, smashing.
A Romano-British cattle enclosure at the entrance to our fort is not what we wanted. When we say Romano-British, we mean the period that follows the Iron Age, when the Romans occupied Britain and our Welsh tribes had started to absorb Roman ways. But at least we found more evidence that this site was primarily domestic. To be honest, we've all been a bit disappointed today at the lack of finds. Of course, there have been some, and what they've done is to prove that this is definitely a late Iron Age site. But that's about it, really. The truth is that from this huge site, this massive hill fort, the closest we've got to the dense population hinted at by Geophys are a few undatable post holes. Have we been digging in the wrong place? For the last 2 days, we've been searching for an Iron Age capital up here on this hill, but we've been thwarted by the geology and the thick, brown, sticky clay. The Geophys has been absolutely fantastic, although it's offered us what seems like a whole mirage of little huts and settlements, and we've got a few finds which are pretty good too. But what we haven't got is a date for the time when this place was at its heyday, and that's what we're going to try and nail down today. If there were large numbers of people living on this fort, they would surely have left evidence of their daily lives. But we're simply not finding it. So Francis has come up with a new plan that involves looking for Iron Age ovens. I don't understand. If we want to nail down the dating, why is our last throw of the dice going to be looking at an oven?
Because, Tony, we've done that end of a site, we've done this side of a site. What we haven't done is this huge area over here.
The middle.
The middle,
yeah.
And that is covered, as you can see on the Geophys, by these oven kilny things.
All right. Do you think that by the end of the day you can give us some robust dating?
We are employing the right techniques to do it.
That's not an answer, really, is it?
Yes, it is. It's a very political answer.
It stank of politics, that answer. Should we get the digger back on?
Yeah. OK, Carrie.
Whether they're ovens or kilns, these features showing up on the magnetometry could be a sign of a busy, occupied part of the site. So it's our last-ditch effort to find more evidence of occupation at Caerau and an exact date. But when Matt actually digs some of these hotspots, the anomalies turn out to be Romano-British slag, proving that lots of people were working up here during the Roman period, but it doesn't help us in our search for our Iron Age people. Yet just when all seems lost, Caerau surprises us. We think we may have finally found some promising features in the roundhouse trench. Ditch ends, features which would have formed the front door to a roundhouse. Francis extended this trench yesterday and it seems to have paid off. It's a real breakthrough. And that's not all. If we've got solid proof of one roundhouse, all the other circular shapes that showed up on the geophys are almost certainly roundhouses too. But we still need dating evidence. With time running out, even site director Francis has picked up his trowel. He's got a post hole, a feature you'd expect to find in a roundhouse, and even better, there's pottery in it. But is it enough to date the house?
But look what we're getting out of here. Right on the top.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's only body shards, but...
Oh, that's Iron Age, though, isn't it?
They've got to be Iron Age. So if this pottery matches the stuff that Naomi's getting, that's fantastic, because it's a straight line going through the front door, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it's yeah, getting over that way.
So, I mean, that would sort of indicate that these two features probably are part of the house. Righto, I'm going to do a bit more digging because I want to make the most of this, but...
Francis reasons that his post hole and a pit outside the door that Nahum is digging line up with each other, putting him right in the heart of our roundhouse. The potsherds he's finding have grit in them, which means they're Iron Age. But to give us an accurate date, we need bigger pieces. If we know the shape of the pot, we can date it and date our roundhouse. Our Iron Age communal cup is almost finished. We've made a wooden vessel the same size as the one in the Museum of Wales, and we're now fitting the bronze handle smelted from scratch on this hill.
Okay,
wow.
Holds it. Brilliant. Excellent.
Does it hold it with 4 points of beer in?
If you're offering.
What do you reckon, Ray?
I think it's cracking. It's a wonderful object. Congratulations to both of you. It tells us something about these people, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. You know, talks about communal activities and feasting.
You'd hope it was communal, because if you had that to yourself, you'd be quite ill, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It might be tempting to try, but I think you'd probably want some help with it, wouldn't you?
Back at our roundhouse, the finds are coming thick and fast. And in the nick of time, Naomi has found something we hope Paul Blinkhorn, our finds expert, can date.
All right, Naomi. I hear rumours of pottery.
The rumours are true, and it's not just any old pottery. I think it's the pottery that we're looking for.
Oh, I say, yeah. Yeah, that's what that is. That's definitely Iron Age. See the angle there, so it's going to come round something like that. That's a big pot. I mean, also something like the base of a storage jar or something.
It is a nice
That's
size
fairly
pot,
hefty.
yeah.
And it's in good nick, and there's more of it. So that's not stuff that's just... And is it in a feature, yeah?
Yeah, I'm excavating this post hole here, and we have got another large piece here in situ.
Fantastic.
Which is almost ready to come out.
Oh, great stuff. I'll hang around then.
Naomi has found a large section of pot from a post hole at the entrance to the roundhouse.
Oh, nice one. There you go.
Oh, wow, look at that. It's a proper little...
Yeah.
It looks like I've got a teacup like that.
It's tiny, isn't it? Yeah, it's a different pot, I think. Almost certainly.
Oh, yeah.
I think you've got a full profile. It's all the way up to the rim.
I hear you've got something interesting, Paul.
Oh, I think you'll like this, Neil.
Hey, now we're talking.
Yeah, well...
This is good.
What we've basically got, Naomi's got a post hole down there. And so far we've had a little piece of a base of what looks like a big storage jar. That's a big vessel by the look of it. But we've also got this, and these two bits joined together. It's a tiny little cup.
Gorgeous.
Isn't it?
And you know what? I don't think that's middle to late.
You think that might be early?
I think that's early. This is probably the only complete profile of an early Iron Age vessel that I've ever seen from South Wales.
You're joking?
There are not very many of them. No,
wow.
no,
What struck me about it, this is interesting as well, is you've got this big sherd of this big jar and this little cup with it. It's almost like a representation of a drinking kit. You've got your big pot with your beer or whatever in, and you've got your little cup for scooping out, and it's right in the top.
Oh, let me have a look at
this.
It's
right in the top of a post.
More of it's still in there?
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. It's all nicely fitting together, isn't it?
So this unassuming piece of pottery, this tiny cup with its distinctive profile from bottom to top, turns out to be the key to the whole dig. It's the most complete early Iron Age cup ever found in South Wales. Not only is it a truly spectacular find in its own right, it conclusively dates our site to the earliest part of the Iron Age. A job well done. We came here looking for an Iron Age capital. In one tiny area of our site, we found a terrace of roundhouses from the very early Iron Age, around 800 BC, that could have housed 100 people. Glaciers, later industry and ploughing make Caerau difficult to read. But if the rest of the site was as heavily populated as this one little corner, we could be looking at hundreds or even thousands of people living here at its height. Looks like our hill fort could be the ancient building co-op of Neil's dreams. It's a place where people had kitchen accidents and performed drinking rituals in the home. Our Romano-British farmstead proves that this hill continued to be occupied on into the Roman period before being abandoned. It's time to celebrate the community of Caerau, past and present.
What has amazed me is the sheer length of time that this place has been occupied.
How long do you think?
1,000 years.
Phil?
For me, it's the sheer fact that we've been able to find buildings. We all need somewhere to live. You only got to look down there and see the homes of so many people. That, to me, is the important thing, that there is a real live settlement on that hill all those thousands of years ago. Yay!
This tunnel in Cornwall is 2,000 years old, and up above me is someone's back garden. We don't know what this place was originally used for, and we don't yet know if it was part of something bigger. But somewhere in the garden out there, let's hope Time Team can come up with some answers. This is a little Cornish garden, higgledy-piggledy garden. It belongs to Joe.
Impressive feature, isn't it,
This is
Tony?
wonderful, isn't it? This is Joe, whose garden it is, whose fogou it is.
No, fogou. I know it's spelt F-O-G-O-U, but it's pronounced fogou.
Oh, really?
It's all to do with the pursing of the lips, they tell me.
And is this a map of it?
This is a plan that was drawn up by a local artist and antiquarian, son of a Penzance schoolmaster, a chap called Blight, in 1864, marking the fogou here with its side creep passage.
This is the fogou?
That's right.
And what are all these little bouldery things?
Well, this possibly is the remains of a stone wall, which was part of the Iron Age feature that surrounded this site and was still largely visible in 1864, but may conceivably have been obliterated when the garden was developed and the house built in 1910.
It's presumably this high ground up here.
That's right. Yes, it would go off sort of in a curve around here, where you can see the sort of bank here.
And do we know what this is?
No, I always thought that was a stream, but it's the stream is much further down,
Yeah,
so I don't know what that
feet.
is.
Yeah. But do you think that there's actually more to the fogou than we can actually see now?
Yes, there
Why?
are lots of reasons for that. One is that this little passage here, at the end of it, there's a small doorway. It's got quite heavy lintels in the shape of a door, and it's plugged with a boulder, so it looks as though this might have carried on further.
In the direction of your lawn over there?
Yes, over there. And then really the most interesting one is that if you dance about on the lawn and thump, it resonates like a drum, sounds hollow. And indeed it does here, where we're standing. And if you... Yes.
Sounds a bit hollow.
Yeah. And it looks as though there might be a passage going off in this direction past the house at least 3 times the length of the fogou.
Right the way to the lawn?
Yeah.
So we have 2 questions to tackle this weekend. Firstly, is there an extension to the fogou under Joe's garden? Well, the geophysics team have just about finished surveying the lawn, so we shouldn't have long to wait for their first results. And secondly, can we find any evidence of the Iron Age settlement which would normally be associated with the fogou? Carenza and Stewart will begin by pacing out the length of the fogou in the hope that they can use Blight's map to find the location of the possible Iron Age wall. The wall itself may have gone, but the bank it would have been built on may still survive.
So this must be the end of it, just hit here. Oops. Underneath the...
I'm off. Thanks very much. Keep well off that now.
I think there's a hole under there.
That's proof, yeah.
Right, where are we?
I think we're right at the end of this fogou
right,
here.
So this is where he reckoned this enclosure was coming around. This is what you've just fallen down,
I think it is, yeah. That's right.
Yes, actually you can see there's the line of it carries on through here, can't we? And this is sort of along the bottom of it here.
It's following the contour around, isn't it?
Yes.
Carenza and Stewart are walking along the ridge of high ground, which is all that's left of the evidence that Blight recorded here with these 2 sketchy lines. If Blight's correct, then the enclosure wall would have continued like this, encircling the fogou and the Iron Age houses inside. So if we're looking for evidence of the settlement and how it related to the fogou, then this is effectively our target area. But we do have one restriction this weekend. We can't excavate within this area, as the fogou is a scheduled ancient monument protected by law. But it shouldn't matter, because if Joe's right, then there could be more of the fogou waiting to be discovered under his lawn. So where did you do your jumping up and down?
Well, there's several places, but there's quite a good one here.
Apparently, we're not the only people Joe's invited to stamp on his lawn. Recently, he asked a local dowser to investigate. Now, I thought dowsing was just used for finding water, but in this case, the dowser was able to tell Joe that the fogou does extend under the lawn. Mick, how do you feel about dowsing?
Oh, sceptical, I think, for the honest answer to that.
Why?
Well, I'd like to know what it is they actually reckon they're picking up. I mean, I know they tell me they've got
We've had a couple of dowsers
water.
here, and they've said that there's remnants of a passage or whatever.
I think I'd rather look at the geophysics first.
Let's have a look at it then.
I think we've got some results, have we now, John?
Yes, yeah. Right,
So
see if you can see things
just
this time.
orientate us where we are.
Yeah, we're actually stood at a point about here.
Is this the
in
house
the middle
over
of the
here,
lawn.
then?
The house is at this
Yeah.
point. This is the resistance data, and this is the whole of the lawned area.
Right.
So we've got a low resistance anomaly curving through, straight section at the top, and it curves around in this direction, suggestive of maybe a ditch or a waterlogged chamber that's now collapsed.
But anyway, wet of some sort.
Wet,
Yeah.
certainly. That's the indication.
You see that, Joe?
It's wonderful. Yes, it's quite stunning. I mean, it corresponds with...
So with Joe's permission, our plan of action is to dig a trench at each end of this curve. If what we can see on the geophysics plot actually is an extension to the fogou, then the theory is that it would run back in this direction to join onto the creep passage, which is approximately where you can just see Robin having a crafty smoke. But what was a structure like this for? Well, even though several have been excavated in the past, the original purpose of a fogou still remains a bit of a mystery. We do know that this isn't the original entrance, and these steps are thought to have been added fairly recently, maybe by smugglers, or even by visiting antiquarians.
Well, as you might imagine with archaeological sites, there's a lot of theories, but the way we're coming down into it, you can guess that refuge is one of the obvious ones, you know, actually sort of coming away from where the settlement might have been, you know, and it's hidden away underground.
Yeah.
The other possibility, of course, with some of them is that they actually go under the ramparts and out through the ditch, so they're a sort of escape route. It's a hell of a thing to build for that. I mean, the other possibility that a number of people have raised is that they're actually for storage. You know, that you've got some sort of underground larder sort of thing. I mean, it might send a lot of food rotten, but I know in Ireland they say, well, you know, what about dairy produce, something like that.
What about a cult? That's
that's
pretty favourite, isn't it?
yeah, that's the other thing that's been, I think that's been raised more recently, really. And there are a number of things here that suggest that. The roof, certainly, just here, look, has got a stone sticking down, which if you're not aware of it, you can crack your skull on it as you come through. And, you know, that might be only people who are, you know, sort of in the know should know about that. Yeah. The other feature is that this has got a sort of side passage in it called a creep. This one's actually got a radon meter in it. Look, but we can go into this.
What's a radon meter?
Well, a lot of granite areas have this gas called radon that comes out.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of sort of scares about it recently, and they're obviously monitoring it here. But if we get past that, you see this actually comes up into a side passage where there's a stone across the end now. And obviously it looks as if a lot of this is infilled, and then it's beyond there that, you know, the idea is that the passage went on.
How old do we reckon this is?
Well, again, it's difficult to say with a lot of them because of the excavations, but this one, the only ones we know in this area are about sort of 400 BC down to 1st century AD. There was one excavated at Caerau with that sort of date. There are one or two attached to courtyard houses round here, which are contemporary of the Roman periods. That's 0 to 400 AD, so sort of late prehistoric, contemporary of the Roman period. 2,000 years old in round figures.
Time of Jesus.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But it's beautiful.
It's a fantastic structure. There's no mortar or cement. It's just the weight of the stones keeping it up. Fogou apparently is Cornish for cave, and only 10 fogous have been discovered in England, and all of these are in Cornwall.
There at the moment.
We're number 3, that's our fogou, and you can see how many there are in the immediate area. The black ones are the ones that are preserved, the hollow circles, if you like, are those that have disappeared. If you open up to a larger picture of Cornwall, even then they're all concentrated to the west of the River Fowl.
And is this Brittany?
That's Brittany, not far away, obviously. These are the souterrains, the underground passages and chambers and creeps of Brittany. And you can see that they're even more numerous in Brittany than they are in Cornwall.
Are there any in other parts of the Celtic fringe?
Well, Ireland is the prime example. They've recorded over 1,000 there. Indeed, I think something like 600 in County Antrim alone. There are a positive hazard to ploughing. But it does show that this is a cultural experience that is limited to, as you said, the Celtic fringe.
But the question at the moment is, are we going to find any more of this fogou under the lawn?
Oh my God. Hang on, what's that?
It looks like a water pipe.
No. Where's Sue?
Would this give you a signal?
Yes.
Would it give you a strong signal?
Yes.
Or put it like this, would it give you the signal that you had on your geophysics? Would it run in a straight line?
The bit that ran in the straight line, I'm a bit surprised the sort of curve that we got on the...
You have an enigmatic smile on your face there, John.
Is there a noticeable trench for the pipe?
Well, we haven't cleaned it up yet because we've only just found it. But, are you the same depth as us? Because you obviously haven't got a water pipe, have you? You should have said.
The water main.
Wow.
But if it's going up in that... Oh.
There we are. Got it. See it as well, look. And it's bending like the geofish shows, look. Oh, wow. Right.
Well, I think that's quite good for locating pipe.
Yeah. Well,
a new job,
it explains what that is. Do you know anything about this, Joe? Is it sewage pipe, water pipe? It's not sewage, it's too small, but never come across it.
It's redundant. I think it connects into an old system that no longer works.
Right. What I reckon we've got, when we put the probes in there, the current will flow into the ground and it will just shoot along the pipe. And we'll have a very broad effect. So we'll put the probes in there, we'll see it. When we're over the top, we'll have a much stronger effect, but you'll still have the effect to one side. Yeah. And so you'll get that broad anomaly that looks like a ditch.
Yeah.
And it's because all the electric currents are just being concentrated along the pipe. So that's why we thought we'd got a trench that wide.
So are we feeling pretty stupid?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you know, that's what the geophysics for, isn't it? You know, it sort of comes in, gets a signal. I mean, it's the sort of thing you'd expect to get from an iron pipe. I mean, we should have looked at it and said, God, that could be an iron pipe, you know.
Now, I've got the map that Joe promised me from the Dowser findings. Now, it's all fairly higgledy-piggledy, but this is the house again.
Right.
There's the lawn.
Yeah.
There's the fogou. He thinks that there is some kind of tunnel going there.
But I mean, this is not where our water pipe is, which is over here.
That's right.
So did they not pick up the water pipe?
I think he was kind of programmed to be looking for tunnels, not for water. We'll ask him.
When's he coming?
You're absurdly cynical about this
you're
stuff.
right.
But there's loads of things that you don't know what the process is. You don't know the process in your own car, and yet you believe it'll take you down the M4. So why this hostility towards what this bloke's doing?
It's just hostility. I just don't understand what the forces are that they reckon they're picking up. I mean, if somebody could explain that to me, that would be very useful.
When's he coming?
Don't know. I'll have to ring him up.
When he comes, get him to go over the ground again.
Yeah.
And I mean, if the system works like he says it does, then he ought to be able to do exactly the same as John does, and he should be able to locate where he thinks it is.
I think it's only fair. If the geophysics failed to find the extension to the fogou, we must at least give the Dowsers a chance. They think that the extension runs under the lawn like this. But the real priority for the archaeologists at the moment is to get Carenza's trench started here across the line of the bank. Because if we can find the Iron Age wall, then we have a chance of getting our hands on some pottery, which will tell us about the settlement and the people who were living around the fogou 2,000 years ago.
Oh! Is this yours?
Mick, come here. Watch this. Can you just show Mick what happens when you hit the?
Well, it's sort of it just sort of. If I hold them like that, I can't possibly turn them.
Yeah.
Right. If I go forward here, they start going of their own accord. They have a complete life of their own. It's an extension of something inside.
Yeah.
A sixth sense, if you like.
I told you it was scientific.
Well, that's interesting, that. I mean, I
think Mick's going to need a little bit more convincing. But he is prepared to allow us to take some labour from his scientific trenches to dig our first New Age trench. As far as the other two trenches on the lawn are concerned, Trench 1 is more or less finished. We've reached the natural bedrock, the RAB, as it's called. But as county archaeologist Nick Johnson is pointing out, Trench 2 will need to be extended because these stones may be the remains of a wall connected with the Iron Age enclosure. Meanwhile, I'm keen to try my hand at dowsing.
Just keep what you're thinking in your mind. There they go, there they go, there they go.
Scary stuff. With no time to waste, our New Age trench gets underway. And even I'm going to lend a hand on this one. Maybe our luck's changing. Perhaps we will find an extension to the fogou. And who knows, maybe Carenza is just about to find the Iron Age wall that would have surrounded the fogou and the settlement here. But what would that settlement have looked like?
This is Chun Castle. It's a big sort of fortified settlement. It's one example of what there could have been here. I mean, personally, I just don't think there's enough space for anything like that.
I tend to agree with you, but I mean, like this, I've got a quote that refers to 3 ditches, actually. A chap called Tonkin in 1702 mentions the site here as on top of a hill within a large triple entrenchment surmounting a hole which leads to a vault, which of course has to be the fogou.
I don't know, I'm still not convinced by that.
It's the right date, but it's the wrong structure. It's the wrong type
too
of
elaborate.
site.
It's not the right. It's not a defensible sort of situation either, really.
No.
I mean, personally, I think my money's probably on this. This is a sort of simpler enclosed settlement. Just one bank and ditch around it. They can be quite varying size, these banks and ditches.
A few cattle byres.
It's a farmstead that's been made defensible, and where you find fogous
associated with these sorts of settlements, then you find that the fogou tends to go underneath the rampart and exits into the ditch. If it is an enclosed settlement we're looking at, then this is more likely to be what it's going to be.
Sure.
The last
And the right
possibility, Joe, is that the other sort of settlement we get is these courtyard houses. These are much later, aren't they, Nick?
These are Romano-British, so they're 1st century AD. But you do find fogous with courtyard houses, although the fogous were associated with earlier settlements and simply have existed right the way through.
An existing site's been adapted in a later manner.
There isn't really space, again, on the site for several of these, which are 25, 30 metres across within an enclosure.
So this is a picture of the type of settlement we're hoping to find evidence of in Corenza's Trench. But what about the extension to the fogou? What chance do we have of finding that? Well, the Dowsing Trench isn't looking too promising. We're not going to give up with it, but at the moment it's looking remarkably like the other 2 trenches on this lawn. In other words, devoid of any kind of finds at all. In fact, all the graphics team have had to work on this afternoon is this, which is based on a bit of 1950s flower pot found by Corenza, who's prepared to say it might have housed geraniums. Thank you, Corenza. So, end of day 1, and really it's only Corenza's trench across the bank which is showing any kind of promise. Beneath that power cable, we've discovered stones here that could be fallen rubble from the Iron Age wall, but we have to extend this trench tomorrow to find out. Mick, you're advocating that we should dig some more excavation trenches.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you call them? Exploratory trenches?
Evaluation, that's the word, yeah.
Is this just blind panic?
No, it isn't. I mean, we're talking to Nick about this. I mean, if this enclosure that's shown on the early maps was around, you know, an Iron Age settlement site or whatever, then it's extraordinary that when they built the house, they planed everything off, which is what our 3 trenches seem to indicate, and presumably then brought other soil in, which is clean. You know, where's the soil on the top of the hill gone? Did it go over the edge? It may be that the only archaeology actually survives around the rim, in fact. But I think the strategy, I mean, Tony's querying, saying we're panicking. I don't feel
We
at least
always
we're
panic at this point in the
Well, I don't
week.
feel
alcohol
panic.
will cure that later this evening
yes,
anyway.
I mean, normally we've had some reinforcement by now. But, I mean, it seemed to me that, you know, this is how you set about a thing like this. You put your evaluation trenches in, you know, to try and work it out.
We've still got 2 more days yet, remember?
OK, so this is the end of day 1. Mick's not panicking. Corenza is, but she says she always does at this time. The Geophys people have gone to another fogou down the road, so maybe they'll come up with something
we
tomorrow.
don't.
Please, I hope so. See you after the break. Day 2. And having dug up half of Joe's lawn, we're now moving our investigation onto the area around Corenza's Trench, which is in this wooded area highlighted here. A garden like this makes it very difficult to see exactly what we're dealing with, but the news from our survey team this morning is that they're beginning to sort it out.
Well, what we've done here is taken the early depiction on the Ordnance Survey map, 1905, when the enclosure was mapped. You can see that ring there?
This thing here?
That's right. What we think, we've located it in Corenza's Trench. And then we've...
hang on, just so it's disappeared now. You can't see that.
It was flattened when the house was built.
Yeah.
But little bits of it survive as earthworks, which we were looking at yesterday, and that's where Corenza's put a trench at the top there.
Right.
And what we've done, we've transposed that and Blight's original survey there. We've digitised that into the electronic Ordnance Survey map with our survey that we did yesterday.
Yeah.
And look at this. You can see here, there's the fogou, and this is the enclosure that was mapped by the Ordnance Survey.
Yeah.
And that other red line is Blight's survey. Well, what it's showing is that this enclosure is actually quite small. It never went through the garden here at all. In fact, it goes underneath the house and out...
It never went through the garden?
No, it never went through the garden.
So we've been digging outside the enclosure?
It's quite possible. I mean, it might be an enclosed courtyard house, something like that.
Which means that we never had a chance of finding the extension of the fogou under the lawn, because the lawn is outside the boundary of the enclosure. And one of the few things we know about fogous is that they're always situated within the boundary of a settlement. So how does Hamish explain what happened yesterday? So why do you think that those rods moved?
Well, there must be some sort of reason. We dowsers don't have the prerogative of being 100% right, unfortunately. And I think there must have been some... part of it, I think, was my concentration probably went, my rational mind took over something. I didn't allow my mind to work properly. I'm not making excuses, mea culpa. I mean, this is something that just hasn't worked for us this time.
Do you feel
But apparently-
triumphantly vindicated, Mick?
No, not at all, actually. No, I mean, I was very sceptical and cynical.
Oh, I
as,
know you are, yeah.
As you know,
Yes,
anyway.
yes, quite right. Yeah.
Oh, well, we're all on a learning
There is
curve,
something
Hamish, aren't
there,
we?
and I'll find out.
That's what it is.
Yeah, we'll find
I'm
out
just
what
going
it
to
is.
say water pipe to you once more.
I don't have any problems with the water pipe.
I wouldn't have.
Well, I don't understand what happened. All we found in this trench was natural rock. But I can honestly say that the dowsing rods did move when I walked over here yesterday. But the most important task now is to widen our search around Carenza's Trench. So in addition to extending this excavation, we've also started another one closer to the fogou, which is already revealing interesting large stones and could be a sign that this part of the garden wasn't disturbed by the building of the house in 1910. With Joe's permission, we'd also like to dig one more trench to confirm that the boundary of the enclosure follows the line suggested by our survey team, who are now busy adding the fogou accurately to our map. Why would you have a big tunnel that's really... There's been an awful lot of work put into it, hasn't there?
Yeah.
Round a little
Well, it would have been
enclosure.
earlier. Fogous are earlier than the courtyard house.
Yeah.
The courtyard house would have been built on top of it.
Oh,
So they
so-
might well not have... They wouldn't have been used.
But they did this
It would
at
have been built
Caen.
first.
They
and
did
then-
this at Caen Uni, didn't they? I mean,
Yeah.
the very elaborate fogou there has a courtyard
Yes,
house on
yeah.
the top of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's much more, as I understand it, like the Irish examples. You know, where you basically got a tunnel under a house for storage or whatever.
But it would have been 400 or 500 years later. Could have been, easily.
So from our point of view, essentially, yesterday we were digging in the wrong place.
Well, you were.
You weren't. Yours was the only trench that wasn't in the wrong place.
But you remember the reason we went there?
The current thinking is that the smaller enclosure might contain a courtyard house. Now, if you remember Victor's drawing from yesterday, a courtyard house looks like this and dates to around about the 1st century BC.
Hey, Tony, this is Bill. Over.
Hello, yeah?
I think we've actually broken our duck. I've got a piece of pottery. Over.
Fantastic. What is it,
We
Phil?
didn't bring any sieves with us, unfortunately.
Come and have a look at this, Tony.
Yeah, we're there, I think.
That's the genuine thing.
The genuine thing.
The genuine what?
Iron
Iron
Age
Age
pottery.
pottery.
Pot. That's what we want.
How do you know that that is Iron Age?
10 years experience in the area.
No, it's...
No, it's handmade pottery. It's got micaceous fabric to it, which suggests it's actually from the lizard. It's not the local granite.
Tell us-
Micaceous.
tell us what micaceous
It's the
Slightly
shiny
shiny.
little mineral in
Glittery.
it.
Can you catch
So it's
this
got
on that?
it's got mica actually put into the clay, in fact, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And
Sort of dated. But yeah, what...
It was difficult to tell exactly
What,
when in the
400
Iron
to
Age.
100?
Yeah.
So anywhere in the Iron Age. 400
Unless you find a
It's the
rim or
right
something
date
like
for
that.
fogou.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Fogou.
Fogou, sorry.
Day 2 and she's still saying fogou.
It's presumably. I mean, is it burnished on the outside, or because it's very dark, very black, isn't it?
Yes, there is a hint that it has been burnished on the exterior.
Yeah.
See, the other thing which is really interesting is that we've gone down onto a subsoil. You see, the soil is now getting a lot lighter and a lot more compacted. We never got that in any of the other trenches, so it looks as though this area hasn't been truncated the way the lawn has.
This is very similar to stuff.
At last we're getting somewhere, our first bit of pottery, and our first evidence to show Joe.
You get a lot more. See the striations on it.
Yeah.
I think it must be that way up. That's probably the chap's marks when he was holding it. And the thing is, you can actually get quite a lot out of a bit like that, because if you look at the curve on that,
Yeah.
that means that you're talking about something probably that sort of size in diameter. You know, you'd fit it onto one of these sort of circular diagrams, and if it's that sort of diameter, then presumably it's that sort of height.
Good heavens.
So you know, you're looking at really something quite large.
And used for what?
Storage, you know, something like that. I mean, it could be almost anything, but because of the diameter, you can at least get something out of it, you know.
The pot's the right date, so what we're hoping now is that we'll start to uncover the remains of a settlement which will be contemporary with the fogou. If we can learn more about the settlement, then we might just learn a bit more about the fogou. And we'll certainly begin to build up a picture of the people that lived here. Victor is now able to reconstruct the pot for Joe so that he can get a clearer idea of what it looked like. Victor has also been busy working on something that will give Joe and his daughter Hannah an idea of how they would have looked if they'd lived here during the Iron Age.
It's sort of quite, well, it's sort of Iron Age punk, really.
Apparently it's quite extraordinary that they used lime wash, which then solidified so that the hair literally stood up like that. We've seen some Roman coins, you know, you've got this spiky hair sticking out.
Is it what you expected
I'm
it
not
to be
sure what
like?
Hannah thinks of that.
Well, it's very clever. I'm not sure it's what I would have chosen myself if I was going to wear anything.
This was high fashion at the time, Hannah.
If Joe's family had lived here 2,000 years ago, they'd probably have farmed the fields around here during the summer and streamed for tin during the winter when the water levels would be higher. Phil is going to spend much of today involved in an experiment to see if we can find some tin ore in the stream in Joe's garden and extract the metal from the rock using the same technique as would have been used by people here in the Iron Age.
Do you want me to hold the pan underneath the rocks here and you can shovel it straight in?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll chuck the big ones out, 'cause we're not going to get any big ones like that.
Right.
Some sort of gritty stuff we're really after.
Oh, eh? So it'll be really, really small pieces then, will it?
Yeah, I would be surprised if we got anything bigger than sand.
Tin was a valuable commodity because it was needed for making bronze, which continued to be in demand long after the Bronze Age.
So in fact your ore then is just going to sink to the bottom, is that the idea?
That's right.
I see.
As you suspend it, the heavy particles sink rapidly.
Right.
And the lighter particles take a bit longer.
And the stones just drop out?
Yeah, I'm sort of doing two actions really. One is continually stratifying, and the other is sort of gently washing over the light material over the front end.
You're not losing any ore out of it at the same time?
Could be. You never get 100% separation.
Right.
I'll transfer to that little black pan, which is a bit more subtle. And swoosh it back, make sure we're not going to lose anything.
So this is the moment of truth.
Yeah, you can see all the light-coloured rocks, which are light in weight as well.
Right.
Going over the front end of the
So
pan.
the ore is a black rock, is it?
Dark in general. You've got some tin there, Phil.
But is this stuff right here?
Just up in the head there. That's where all the heaviest material is. And there's one or two. They've actually got some reasonably sized pieces in there as well.
What?
That, yeah.
But that is tin ore?
Yes.
Brilliant.
That's smeltable.
Next to the lawn, workers started on our final trench, which is being dug here, in the only workable space along the line of the enclosure. Now, because the garden's so overgrown, the geophysics team have been prevented from surveying any more here, and instead have been asked by Nick Johnson to find a lost fogou, which is supposed to be sited in this field at Treverneeg, approximately 12 miles away. This is another fogou visited and recorded by Blight in the 1860s, but it hasn't been seen by anyone this century. Obviously, if we can find it, it will be an important discovery, increasing the number of fogous in Cornwall by 10%. Meanwhile, back at our industrial site, Simon Timberlake is called in to help with the next part of the experiment. The tin ore's ground into powder and then rolled into mud balls to keep it together.
Concentrated here.
Right.
So it's really rich ore, and that's the key to the success.
And then how much sawdust?
Just about, that's right.
Enough?
About that, yeah. Remember that tin smelts about 1,000 degrees centigrade, and we want to get the whole furnace really, really hot before we put the charge in.
I'm still not sure about this separation of the tin from the ore.
Well, the ore is tin oxide, yeah?
Right. You take the oxygen out.
Yeah, we're burning the charcoal at the bottom of the furnace. There's very little oxygen.
Right.
And there's it's carbon monoxide there, and so that's reducing the tin oxide.
So take the oxygen out.
Exactly, yeah.
And you're left with a tin.
Just tin, yeah.
This primitive furnace is basically just a hole in the ground lined with clay, and the bellows are made from pig skin and were specially made for this experiment. Like any primitive technology, the key ingredients are time and hard work.
So how long are we going to have to keep this up then?
Oh, for about half an hour now.
Half an hour to smelt it?
Yep, just to make sure. But after about 15 minutes, we'll put another charge in.
Right.
But how are we getting on at our main excavation, Carenza's Trench? Well, in addition to discovering 2 more electricity cables, we're starting to uncover what we think are Iron Age structures inside the rampart wall. The question is, do all of these bits of stone relate to a courtyard house?
You can see we've got this line of...
Yeah, well that was showing up those 2 stones I saw before,
yes. Yeah. And all this, I mean, you can see how loose this is, all these
full of voids,
in here.
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean this, well obviously the sort of possibilities that have to present themselves is that this is about the same width as the fogou, and that
oh, so
is
we're
a
thinking
question.
of a second fogou, are we now?
Well,
yeah.
Of course, it's a bit too early to tell, but if we have found more of the fogou in this trench, Joe is going to be delighted.
Is there any finds amongst it? That's the...
Yes, we've had some very nice bits of pottery.
Can you stand on your...
The big bit.
I think we found the biggest bit of pottery yet on time, too, Mick.
Good Lord.
Here we go, nice bit of burnish ware.
With the rim on the top?
Absolutely standard late Iron Age.
Yeah.
Couple of centuries BC.
This is all good dating material, and what we have now are several different varieties of Iron Age pot. This, for instance, is an Iron Age cooking pot.
What we found so far is the evidence of structures, the exact character of which we're not quite sure, so we need to work out whether there is any genuine faces to any of these structures, both on this side and that side.
Yeah.
And so far, all that we have found is evidence of occupation. We haven't found any occupation layers.
Right.
At the moment, we think that the most likely candidate is on that side
inside
over there, and I think we ought to investigate that, and we got some, with a bit of luck, we've got some really good stuff to look forward to tomorrow.
Elsewhere in the garden, our smelters have reached their moment of truth. Will they have any tin to show for a hard day's work?
So what are we looking for? Will we see it when we
Well, I
see
think
it?
where the tin will be, it'll be beneath the base of the furnace, yeah?
Yeah.
So we should have some slaggy, really vitrified bottom to the furnace.
So it'll be literally on the bottom?
Yeah, it'll probably be underneath, down the crack.
Ah, yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's tin in that, it's metallic.
Yeah.
And we can try to cool it down by putting some water on, but we need to get it a little bit cooler first. Ah, look,
oh, what?
Can you see the tin?
Really? Yeah.
Now that's mixed up with slaggy bits, really. But what I'm hoping is that we might actually have some that's run through the bottom of the furnace, yeah?
Right.
There. Oh, there. Put that on. Try to get this over here, Phil. Put it on this hammerstone, and I'll smash some of it up. Yeah. Try and get it on a nice flat spot.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Oh, you got a lovely bit of tin there.
Oh, wow. Brilliant.
You got a little tin. Oh, there we are.
Amazing.
Look. Do that with your penknife, Phil. Got a nice bit of tin in there.
Like Christmas, isn't it, eh?
You remember what I said, that it would go through the cracks.
Look at it, and there's some more bits there, look.
Yeah, it'll go through the cracks and it will cool underneath the base of the furnace. That's where it cools when it goes. It's a lovely bit, isn't it? Isn't that nice?
Brilliant.
So end of day 2, and it seems that everything we've attempted today has gone incredibly well. We have our tin, we seem to be unearthing the settlement, we may even have found more of the fogou for Joe. Tonight, with the wine flowing, it seems like there's no question we can't tackle. Well, maybe one.
I mean, have you developed a personal opinion as to what you think it was originally built for?
I think they're
Isn't it lovely to see them
they're
wriggle?
fridges. Right, because by the time we
Stop trying to influence him.
I think they're for some ritual purpose, of which I don't know. I have no problem with them being used as refuges and stores. At the same time, I don't think that a refuge and a store require that sort of structure in the first place.
We've been talking for long enough. I think
everybody on Time Team would like to say a big thank you to our good hosts for an excellent meal. And I'd ask you all to charge your glasses. Here's to tomorrow.
Day 3, and once the important job of recording the archaeology has been done, today's business can get underway, and that is to make more progress with this trench. Can we work out what the structures are? Are these loose stones concealing the extension to the creep passage that Joe is still hoping to find? Well, there's only one way to find out.
More a matter of taking them sequentially more than anything else.
Yeah, it's like that kids game when you have straws in a pile. You have to pick them up without dislodging the one below.
Meanwhile, out at Trevor-Neagh, the geophysics team are on the hunt for the lost fogou. Archaeologists reckon it could be in one of 2 fields, and having drawn a blank in the field next door yesterday, the team are hopeful that they'll find more than just cabbages here.
What do you think of that then, Tony? I bet you think that's a small piece of tin for a day's work, don't you?
Would it have taken the Iron Age people that long to make this little blob?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, there's a lot of work gone into that.
Why are we concentrating so much on tin? As far as I understand it, you've got the Bronze Age and then the Iron Age, and this settlement is part of the Iron Age. So where does tin fit in?
But that just, it's a matter that they've actually started to work iron. It doesn't mean to say they stopped working bronze, or making bronze. That is a constituent part of bronze, so you mix that with copper to make your bronze. So as you went into the Iron Age, they were still making bronze. It just carried on.
So in the same way that in the 20th century we got plastic, but that didn't mean that suddenly metal became redundant.
That's about it.
So do you think that our settlement might be here because there were tin deposits nearby?
I think tin was probably exploited by the people here, but I think well, this particular site is probably more than just a farming site. But you're never very far from tin. You don't have, in West Penwith, you don't have to site your settlement specifically for tin because it's all around you.
We may not be finding bronze in our trenches, but both excavations are turning up fantastic finds. This trench, for example, has produced this lovely piece of hand-decorated Iron Age pot, which Victor has just finished reconstructing. In Carenza's trench, progress is being made slowly removing the loose stones, but the possibility of finding the extension is now beginning to look less likely.
So, could be all that loose stuff was infill for the path here.
Yeah, I mean, what really got to get some other edges to it now. You just don't know about this other side.
So no extension to the fogou for Joe here, but we are now beginning to get a better understanding of the various Iron Age structures in this trench. Here's Carenza's original trench with the bits of stone found on day 1. This rubble fell downhill from where the wall actually stood, which is where Carenza is now working. And at the far side of the trench, we think we're now beginning to find the remains of an Iron Age house.
Oh, isn't this fascinating? Oh, that's like that big stuff we had yesterday, isn't it? With the grits in it.
That's it. Yeah, that's come out of the rubble.
Storage jars, yeah. Well,
that's the first bit we've had out of there. Yeah. That's quite exciting.
There's some more there.
Yeah.
How about that?
Look at that then.
Difficult to see when it's dirty like that, isn't it? And the soil's dirty.
Pottery,
but imagine knowing that when you find a piece of dirty-looking piece of stone, that it's something that's 2,000 years old.
Well, Joe's neighbours are clearly impressed, but what's important from our point of view is that all the pottery we're finding is too early to be associated with a courtyard house like this. Which means we're back to our first theory that our settlement looked more like this. And if we're right, we'll have made the rare discovery of an Iron Age settlement that's contemporary with a fogou, hopefully getting us a step nearer to finding out why the people who lived here built fogous in the first place.
What do you think it was used for then?
Underground swimming pool or to hide.
To hide in it, yeah.
We now have the geophysics results from Trevor-Neagh. Has John finally got something to smile about?
Here we come.
How are we doing then, John?
Pretty good timing.
Yeah.
Oh,
crikey. That's true.
Do you think Tony will believe it?
Yeah, no, he won't. I think it's a pipe trench.
Yeah, I mean...
That's brilliant, isn't it?
Just what we expected. enclosure ditch, really clear magnetic anomaly, and then the fogou coming off at a slight angle.
Which marries up exactly with Blight's plan of 1867, boundary ditch, and fogou coming off like that. Even the little break, you know, with the narrow doorway that he recorded there.
That's fantastic, isn't it? I mean, this has been lost, how long, Nick, since the...
1867?
67 is the date of Blight's paper.
So it's been lost for 100 years.
No one else found it after that.
Good to see it again.
So a real success with geophysics, and the fogou at Trevenigues officially back on the map. And it's possible we may have some good news for Joe too. For although we couldn't excavate the fogou in his garden, it hasn't stopped Stuart taking a closer look at the structure itself. Stuart, what have you come up with?
Oh, something really exciting here. What I've done is mapped out where the side passage is underground.
Yes.
And related it back to the surface using the entrance down there as a kind of key mesh to it. And what I've done is laid out the actual angle. That's the blocked end just down there.
Yeah.
But just set in from it, there looks like there's an odd joint underground. And I didn't really get a chance to examine it very carefully. But when you come up to the surface, there's this boulder sticking through. This is what caught my interest earlier on.
Yes. Which is exactly where we were on the first day when you said to me, go like that.
Yeah.
It sounds hollow.
Yeah, good.
So you really think, from your surveyor's perspective, that there's the possibility that there is some more tunnel going in that direction?
It's a possibility. That alignment looks quite interesting.
What do you mean by a joint underground?
Well, the stones put together very awkwardly, so the stone's being pushed in.
Pushed it, blocking something.
It's possible.
These stones could, of course, be garden stones, but equally they could be the tips of large stones which go deep into the ground. And it's hard to ignore the fact that they seem to line up with what could be a blocked entrance to the creep. Of course, it's frustrating that we can't dig inside the scheduled area this weekend, but we can't complain. We already have enough to deal with from our excavations in the rest of the garden.
Nick, come and have a look at what we've got here.
This trench, for example, which has so far failed to find the enclosure wall, is now starting to produce last-minute important evidence.
Oh, crikey, yes, it's smooth on one side, isn't it? See that, Joe? It's rather like the one you've got already, isn't it?
Another quernstone, is it?
Well,
Yeah.
the rubbing stone for, yeah. Where's that come from?
This has just come out of the slight ditch that there is here, cut into the natural, roughly on the line of the enclosure.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fantastic. It's
That's
really
lovely,
nice. This
isn't it?
trench has turned up some really nice things as well, because it's been a bit
That's gonna be
dispiriting,
nice,
I think, working on it.
What we found here is half a saddle quern, which would have been used for grinding things, mainly flour for making bread. And because it was found with Iron Age pottery, it's actually a very good indication that people were living here and preparing food during the Iron Age.
So we've now got this in a securely dated context. I mean, they're not very easy to date, apart from
If you've
apart
got
from that.
half
It's
of
great.
it there, then the other bit ought to be in there somewhere, shouldn't it?
Yeah, unless it was broken in the Iron Age and they said, oh,
Thrown
damn,
away
we
in
chucked the other
disgust.
piece as
Oh,
far
I
as they
see.
could.
Oh, a bust one.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
the stuff never is there, is it, next to what you want?
This trench is also beginning to reveal evidence of burning. So this could be a hearth, which is showing up as a charcoal stain against the lighter natural soil. It's hard to believe we didn't find anything on day one, because we now have a total of 60 sherds of pottery, amongst which are 5 or 6 different types of Iron Age pot. And what's amazing is that these storage and cooking pots, along with the flour-making equipment, represent the complete domestic toolkit for an Iron Age house. But what's most important is that all the pottery is contemporary with the fogou, which tells us that the remains in our trenches existed during the time the fogou was in use. It's amazing. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? What can we say about it?
Well, you must remember, Tony, that this is a sort of keyhole in a big site. You know, you've just taken one little slot across it. So that rather like if you dug a trench across your house and it went across the living room into the hall, it would be difficult to reconstruct the rest of the building from it.
Yeah.
But if you went to a lot of the prehistoric sites in this area, there'd be masses and masses of these interconnected walls like that. And that's clearly, Nick, what we're looking at a part of, I would think, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that we can start by saying that we got the back or the inner side of an enclosure wall.
Can I tread in your trench?
Yeah, go on. You've been dying to do it all day.
I'm so glad that wall survived taking
here.
it down.
This is the inner face, inside face of a rampart.
And the outside would be down there.
And the outer face has tumbled.
So that's, as it were, the outer wall of the
settlement. That's right,
Yes.
of the settlement. And inside the settlement, there are buildings and structures built against the inside wall.
So what do we think this big curve might be?
Well, we think it's part of a wall, and we think that over there is part of another wall, which is going off at a different angle. And this is slightly confused by the fact that a water pipeline comes through here.
The pipe's not Iron Age, Tony.
Well, and is this an earlier stage of settlement to this, or is this part of that?
Well, we think probably that may well be a drain, funnily, exiting where that water pipe now goes, through there.
And over here there's another wall.
Yeah, and that's, we think, part of a hut circle.
And here's the post hole.
And inside a post hole.
But this is only half the post hole.
Only half the post hole, obviously holding a post, perhaps to help hold up the roof. And here are the perhaps remains of 400 years of rebuilding, living and rebuilding behind a rampart associated with the fogou. And the important thing is that the vast majority of finds are entirely Iron Age in date.
And the fogou, of course, occupies an enormous area of this enclosure. It dominates that end of the enclosure, and the probable entrance comes up right in the middle of it. So rather than it being a little tiny feature going out under the wall, which we rather thought to begin with, Stuart's plan now shows it to be, you know, the major dominating thing at that end of the enclosure.
Can we now complement our picture of Joe with a reconstruction of how the settlement looked between 400 to 100 BC? We know that the fogou dominated one end of the enclosure, leaving only limited space for domestic buildings at the other end. The archaeologists have speculated that there might have been an outer enclosure, the evidence for which might be the collection of stones found under Joe's lawn on day one. But what's important about the discovery of the settlement this weekend is that we can now put the fogou into some sort of context. Not only can we visualise for Joe how the wall ran across the bank in his garden with the Iron Age house inside, but we can see the fogou, just a mound above the surface, in relation to the size of the enclosure and the other buildings. So what was a fogou for? I personally don't believe it was just a fridge or a hiding place. It's far too well built for that. I think it's more to do with the third option. It's a place connected with people's spiritual beliefs. This is Poole Harbour in Dorset, one of the largest natural harbours in the world. Today it's a haven for waterborne pleasure seekers, but archaeologists believe that 2,000 years ago this was a very different place. An international port that traded as far as the Mediterranean, and at its hub, this apparently insignificant island tucked away in a corner. Why? Because Green Island, where I am now, has produced some remarkable archaeological finds. Coins, masses of pottery, including high-status foreign ware, and evidence of iron smelting and shale working. So far, so good. But this island has never been thoroughly excavated. And if we're going to prove it was the Dover of its day, we're going to have to come up with something much more substantial. And as usual, we've got just 3 days to do it. If there were a port in Poole Harbour 2,000 years ago, why on an island? And why a small blob so far from the main channel? The questions were raised 3 years ago when 40 test pits were dug all over the island, revealing imported pottery and hinting at foreign trade. But the test pits were too small to find structures. Now Time Team has come here to investigate the theory that Green Island is archaeologically rather special. How many times on Time Team have I said this could be a real significant archaeological site, and we've ended up with a couple of post holes or a bit of Roman road? Are we really likely to be able to prove that this place was an Iron Age port?
I think we've got a lot better chance with this one because of the finds that have already come from the place.
I have to say, at first glance, these finds don't look particularly spectacular, do they?
you.
So, why are you showing us these 4 paltry sherds?
Because of the mix of material, we've got imports and native wares covering the 1st century BC into the 1st century AD. Things like this Samian coming from southern France. We've also got northern French wares. Now, all that's coming in and being found in association with what we can date as Iron Age wares that are being made locally.
Now, these look like proper finds.
They're
What
fascinating.
on earth are they?
One of the big manufacturing industries on the island was shale working. That is the blank, that is the waste product of making a shale armlet. It's lathe worked and it's pre-Roman, so it's very unusual to find them using a lathe for this type of work before the Romans arrived here.
But we're going to have to find more than a few bits of pot and a blank off an armlet, aren't we, if we're going to prove that this place was a major port?
Yeah. I mean, we need more material to start with so we can see what sort of range of material. We need more evidence of the industrial activity that was going on.
Why industrial? I thought we were looking for a port, not industry.
Because this sort of stuff is probably, you know, high status, valuable objects. They're making it here. It's presumably then going out.
Exactly. It's not being left here. We don't find the finished article here at all. It's ending up elsewhere.
Any other clues that we can look for?
The big thing that I'm hoping to get out of this week is structural evidence, whether they're warehouses, manufacturing areas, hearths, kilns, that type of thing.
So where do we dig?
Well, we're going to do some geophysics in the open areas on the island anyway, but as a result of the test bits that Eileen's dug, we've already got a couple of areas that we can start putting a trench in already.
Gosh, that was a tough one. Stone.
An Iron Age port might have had wharves and docks, but if there were any on the shores of Green Island, they've long since gone, eroded by the sea. So instead, we're searching the interior for evidence of trade, such as foreign pottery, and industry producing more than was needed locally. We've targeted 2 areas, Trench 1 near test pits which revealed domestic debris, can fill fine settlement, and a second area here, where Eileen found worked shale and iron slag. Could this be where exports were manufactured? Time Team doesn't often dig on islands, and as you can imagine, getting us and the gear over here created quite a few larks. But once we're here, it's incredibly quiet and also very beautiful. There's loads of honeysuckle and mountain ash and chestnuts and these huge rhododendrons, which I think are going to create quite a few problems once we start digging. And there are a lot of ticks as well. Because of its ecology, the island's a triple SI, a site of special scientific interest. And that's going to create some practical difficulties. Mechanical diggers are out, so we've got to dig by hand. And we've got to keep the topsoil separate so that it can be restored when we backfill to preserve the ecology. A lot of the archaeology Eileen found was a metre down, so Phil and his army will have to shift a lot of spoil. And Geophys are also having to adapt to the terrain in their hunt for the industrial area. John, I have to tell you, there's been a certain amount of grumbling from your team about the fact that you're making them use such cumbersome equipment.
It's actually because the archaeology is so deep here. We won't reach it with the normal instruments. It's meant to be about a metre down. So this is ideal for sorting out that problem.
What is that machine?
Well, it's a magnetometer, the same as this.
And what does it read?
It reads magnetics. And so it will pick up ditches and metalworking areas and pits and so on, all the sort of archaeology we expect here. It's just not very good where you've got low branches.
I think we should stop talking and just watch Claire for a few minutes.
It's good entertainment.
Henry, our surveyor, is also getting tangled up in the island's vegetation. His GPS equipment doesn't work without a clear line of sight to a satellite. And Stuart, our landscape archaeologist, looking for telltale lumps and bumps which might say something about the island's past, well, he's just looking lost. But the good news is that already the archaeology is promising. We've barely scraped the surface in Trench 1 and late Iron Age finds are jumping out.
That's a meaty rig, isn't it, eh?
That's a serious piece of pot, isn't it?
Among Eileen's finds was a lot of worked shale. It's an easily fashioned oily rock which is found locally. Until recently, no one knew what to make of these rounds with square holes in them.
For centuries, antiquarians looked at these and thought it was money. and they were given the name coal money. They thought it was the trading tokens that the Phoenicians brought over.
Made out of coal?
Made out of coal, exactly, the oil shale. And it wasn't until the 19th century that they looked at it again and looked at the working marks and realised that no, something else is happening.
How did they get these squares out of the middle?
They'd use tools similar to these and hollow out the centre core.
What's this extraordinary looking... It looks like a huge nut of a massive 19th century industrial machine.
That's a rough out for a bracelet. If this had continued to be worked, it would have been narrowed down and it would have ended up as a gorgeous black bracelet.
Whenever we look at finds, there's always one on the table which is so fantastic that I know it can't possibly have come from our site.
You are completely right. It's 1st century AD, it's a Romano-British dog bowl, we call them. This is from Egerton Hill in West Dorset, but we have a tiny sherd of one from this site, again excavated earlier this season.
So we know that things like that were in existence here.
And complete at one point.
Eileen's belief that Green Island was a port, or part of a port, isn't just based on finds, but on a massive feature first identified 3 years ago. 2 huge jetties in the channel between the island and the mainland. They're now under mud and only just visible at the very lowest tides.
When they were originally found, it was thought that it was a continuous causeway really connecting Green Island really to the mainland. And they found, just as Victor's shown here, there's a 70-metre gap just at the deepest point, so shipping could presumably pass through the middle there, but it's not one continuous feature.
What are they made of?
These are a series of oak posts, about 25 centimetre diameter, with sharpened ends which have been driven down into the bottom of the harbour. And then we've got a whole series of Purbeck stone, limestone material that's been dumped down and rammed into that to make it really solid, almost like a sort of a harbour wall.
John, do you know of anything else like this at all?
I certainly can't think of anything along the Atlantic coast. To find anything comparable, you'd really have to go to the Mediterranean world, to the Greeks and the Romans. What surprises me is the amount of investment that's gone into constructing something like this.
The jetties have been dated to 250 BC. Although they could have been part of a port, as shown by Victor, they could equally have been defensive. Either way, the question remains, what role did Green Island at one end of the jetties play? Back in Trench 1, Phil's already deep into the Iron Age, and at the rate he's going, he'll be in the Neolithic by nightfall. Phil, I've never seen you adopt a 3-spade strategy in a trench before.
Well, it's the best compromise to actually dig this trench, Tony. The fact is we've got about a metre of sand to go down through.
But I thought archaeology was about layers. I thought that's why you used a trowel.
That's if you can actually distinguish the layers. In this case, it is just sand. The layers, if they're there, are totally indistinguishable. So what we're doing is taking it down in a series of 10-centimetre spits. The best compromise we can come up to is to shovel them off, the sand breaks up and we recover the pottery. And what we don't recover, we get out the sieving. And you can see the results of our strategy. 2 nearly full trays of pottery from what? 1.5 spits that we've dug off. That amount of pottery is from large-scale settlement on this island.
So we've got loads of finds, but we also want buildings. Can Geophys help?
I've been trying to work out what I think's going on. We've only been able to do a sort of narrow strip because of all the trees and the vegetation, so it's only 20 metres by 50. But I think you can see these really clear anomalies coming through, and that's my interpretation. It looks like a series of enclosures.
That's good, isn't it?
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's just what we're hoping for.
I mean, I'd like to have a look at that junction there with a small trench.
That's excellent.
That sounds a good idea, doesn't it?
Get the relationship between the two.
But if I remember right, your test pit that had a bit of furnace material was approximately there?
It was, yep.
Well, if we did a trench to take in that old test pit,
that would be great.
The linear we've got, and see what's going on.
Yep.
Why did you go ooh when he said enclosures? What do you think we might find?
Well, we were saying that we were interested in structures, weren't we? And this
Exactly.
straight away starts to look as if it's not just finds, but there's boundaries and buildings and all the rest of it.
Eileen's hunch that this area was promising seems to have been confirmed by Geophys, and we're putting in 2 trenches. Trench 2 is going into the area where Eileen found a bit of furnace and Geophys got a big spike. Could this be the furnace? And in Trench 3, we're targeting an enclosure ditch, which might show where settlement or workshops were. Archaeologists believe that a late Iron Age trading network extended all the way from Britain as far as India. Dorset was the territory of the Dura-Treges, about whom little is known. They did build Maiden Castle, and in their territory was the biggest known port in southern Britain at Hengistbury Head, 25 miles from our site. But focus is now shifting to Poole Harbour because of the work Eileen has done here. On Fursey Island and the Ower Peninsula, there's extensive evidence of Iron Age settlement and industry. How could Green Island have fitted into a major port complex? It is a funny old place to have a port though, isn't it, Mick? I mean, you come from overseas, you drop the stuff off here, but then you've got to ship it over to the mainland
Yeah,
again.
because it's on an island. Whatever you bring here or take from here has got to cross the water already, hasn't it?
I mean, there may be an aspect of defence that we're looking at here. When we look at some of the early trading sites in the Mediterranean occupied by the Greeks and the Phoenicians, places like Cadiz, for instance, they're on islands, and so obviously you've got a certain amount of defence.
The island seems to be stuffed with finds. We're finding them in the trenches, and now we're finding them on the beaches. Taking a break from his trench, Kerry's spotted something intriguing falling out of the cliff on the northwest of the island. Pottery, flint, and something even more auspicious, our first sign of industrial activity.
This looks more like iron slag or iron ore that you've got here.
We've had iron slag from here before, and the big question really on Green Island is whether it's sort of what stage in the iron making process does it relate to? I mean, basically, is it iron smithing? Basically, is iron coming into Green Island and someone's working it? Or are people actually taking the iron ore itself, putting it into a furnace and actually producing metal here in the first stages of production? That's what we'd really like to try and find out. And what's exciting about this really is that this slag here is not just slag, but it's also furnace lining. So we've actually got part of the furnace there. You can see the sort of clay which has been fired, and it's associated with flints and Iron Age pottery. There's a bit of black burnishware there, which is from the Iron Age.
Bits of furnace are probably falling out of the cliffs because 170 metres of the island have been eroded over the last 2,000 years. But if we can just trip over furnace lining, then this is fantastically promising for our search for industry on the island. We're also getting a sniff of industry from our trenches in what's now becoming known as Mosquito Alley, where in Trench 3, Matt is looking for a feature which Geophysics thought might be an enclosure ditch. There's no sign of the ditch yet, but we have got our first shale core.
Good stuff here. We've got, it looks like a pit or something coming around here, but best of all, down there we've got a shale core.
Hey!
Just turning up there, actually inside this pit.
That's awfully small. Is that the interior diameter of the bracelet?
It could have been a ring or another piece of ornamental jewellery.
Oh, they were making a whole range of items.
Including cups and different types of jewellery as well.
Ah.
Miles?
Hello?
I found something.
Just a few metres away, Miles in Trench 2 is looking for evidence of metalworking, and he may already have hit pay dirt.
What you got, Miles? Well, it looks suspiciously to me like some kind of furnace bottom.
Aha, yes. Yeah, that's a smithing hearth bottom, so that's what you get at the bottom of the furnace. We were talking earlier about smelting and smithing. Well, that is comes from the smithing stage. Once you've got your metal, you've started to work it and actually turn it into useful artefacts.
All right. Does that mean that smithing is taking place in this trench where this has come from then?
It's taking place somewhere in the vicinity. It doesn't tell you exactly where it is. We can't be certain that it was taking place in the exact fine spot to
What would tell you the exact fine spot if I finding it sitting in the ground?
Right, well, the thing we really want to try and look at is hammer scale. Now, when you're working iron, the outside surface tends to form this crust, and when that sort of falls off, as you forge it, it sort of creates a
so little sort of sparks.
It's sparks flying over it, absolutely. And that's called
yes.
hammer scale. And the hammer scale tends to stay where it was made. So if we can identify areas with high concentrations of this, then we can basically say that's where smithing was taking place.
This is tantalising evidence that somewhere near this trench there was a blacksmith's workshop, which would be a major find. The search is now on for the structure itself, and of course any hammer scale would be good to find. Phil's getting very excited by what's coming out of Trench 1. Phil, is that just a scatter of stones or is it something more significant?
This is definitely something more significant, Tony.
Ooh.
This is a pile of stones, but the important thing about it is it's actually got some shape to it. Look, there's a deliberate straight line along there. There's another one going out there. This is not just a pile of stones that have come down at random within the hill wash. This is a deliberate pile of stones, and I honestly believe that we are looking at an Iron Age or Romano-British surface, just like you're sitting on a surface now, maybe 2,000 years old.
Could this be a structure rather than just a path or a floor?
I don't think it's a structure, but I'll bet you there's a structure very, very close.
Any more finds?
That, I think, is our best piece of dating evidence. That is the core of a lathe-turned shale bracelet.
Oh,
and the association of that with the stones and all the pottery around it, I think, confirms that this pile of stones is Iron Age or Romano-British.
Mick, has anything like this been found on the island before?
No, nothing like this has turned up, and it's exactly the sort of thing, structural thing, that we've been looking for.
We said we wanted a profusion of finds. Looks like we've got a profusion of finds. We said we needed structures. We may well have structures. But does it mean we've got a port? Join us after the break. Beginning of day 2, and once again we're about to disturb the peace and tranquility of Green Island here in Poole Harbour as we try to find out whether it was once a thriving Iron Age port. In our effort to get to grips with what was happening on the island 2,000 years ago, we've got 3 trenches open, each targeting a different key feature. In Trench 1, Phil's trying to find out whether his pile of stones is the first structure ever found on Green Island. On the way, he's finding more shale cores. We know that metal was being worked on the island, and some of that evidence has come from Trench 2. What Miles wants to find is the furnace itself. But so far this morning, all we've had out of the trench are shale cores. Ta-da!
Perfect.
Well, that's it. We've got another one.
Wow, it's lovely. That's complete.
If this was a port, the island would have been crisscrossed by enclosure ditches, and that's what Matt's hoping to find in Trench 3. But guess what?
Oh, is that more rough out for a shell bracelet?
The manufacture of highly prized shale armlets and jewellery was obviously happening all over the island, probably for trade. Jake Keane is going to attempt to make a replica Iron Age armlet. Though shale's easy enough to work and polish with modern power tools, it's altogether a different matter with the tools available 2,000 years ago.
So what are you going to do to get your bracelet out of it?
Select your lump, split it, and then see how you go from there.
Show me how to do that then.
OK, let's have a go.
God, it does smell a bit, doesn't it, really?
Yes, that's the oil in it.
Oh, look at that.
Let's scribe this. That's about your size, all right?
You reckon? Have you ever seen this done before, Sean?
I haven't, no. It's, I mean, you dig these things up and you think, well, I know what this is, but you don't really, because until you've actually seen it being made, it just brings the whole thing to life, really.
Some funny old stuff, isn't it?
The other key industry that we're trying to bring back to life is ironworking. And in Trench 2, they think they may be closing in on the Iron Age furnace. Ratchet, suddenly we're digging big holes in the middle of the trench. What's this?
Well, it's quite exciting, really, because we sectioned this feature off to see whether it would be going down.
Yeah.
And found this really nice vertical edge here. So hopefully it's part of the furnace.
How can you tell the difference between here and here? Because it looks exactly the same colour to me.
It's more by feel, really, because this is very loose.
Can we speculate what this might be to do with the furnace yet?
Not yet. It's early days yet.
If this does turn out to be part of an Iron Age furnace, it'll be the first one ever discovered in situ. Brilliant though that would be, it won't tell us why they were smithing iron on an island. But how much of an island was it 2,000 years ago?
Green Island is quite a small island now, but was it like that in the Iron Age?
No, it wasn't. It would have been larger if you drain the water down to about 2 metres below its present level, which is probably where it was, the sea level was.
How do you know it was 2 metres lower in the Iron Age?
There was a Roman site just on the north side of Brownsea which indicates the water level must have been about that sort of level.
Our site was part of a much bigger island that took in Brownsea and Fursey Islands. Present-day Green Island was the bit that was closest to the navigable channel. But frustratingly, we can't look for wharves or quays or other direct evidence of a port because they're not there anymore. About 170 metres of quay seafront near the jetty are now underwater because of erosion and rising sea levels. We're finding industry because we're digging in areas that were well inland. How's Phil's structure coming on in Trench 1?
There is good news and bad news, really.
Yeah.
You remember last night we had a big spread of stones?
All the way over here.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Well, they are the stones that's on the spoil tip behind you now.
Oh, yeah.
Firstly, there are quite a number of flint nodules. I think that these nodules are the raw material to make the tools to work the shale. We've also got plenty of examples of worked shale. We've actually got a shale working site. The other stones are this very coarse ironstone. Now, they break this up to include in their pottery, to actually temper the pottery. We've also got pottery making as well. And I think that what we were looking at was a dump of raw material.
So when I was trying to push you about whether this was a structure or not, hang on, it's got a mosquito on you, and you refused to be pushed, actually you were right, there wasn't a structure here.
I didn't think there was, but we do now have a structure. Look at this superb series of pitch stones running right the way across. Also, look how different the soil is on this side. See, it's got all these bits of stone. To on this side, we've actually got much darker material with quite a lot of bits of charcoal.
So what does that imply that this is?
That implies that this is a deliberate edge, possibly a terrace, some form of revetment. Perhaps this is the edge of a building. That I don't know.
So though we've lost one possible structure, we've gained another more definite one. We're ahead. We've got 4 trenches open, producing a flood of finds. And now the archaeologists want to open another. Geophys have been sent into this area in the middle of the island. But they're going to have to hang on a tick. I imagined that the most useful implement on the island would be this, but it's not. It's this. It's a tick tool. And I don't know if you can see this little black dot there, that's a tick. And what you have to do is you press the tool into the flesh along here, run it all the way up there, like that, and then turn this thing round anti-clockwise 180 degrees, like that, dead as a doornail. But if you think I've got ticks, it's nothing compared with Geophys. How many ticks do you reckon you've had between you in the last day or so?
I think about 36, but I'm not showing you where.
So why have you got this poor masochist into this part of the island?
It's because we now have an opportunity to investigate this meadow area that hasn't been looked at by anybody before. But we know from the test pits that we've dug just down the slope there, it all seems to be centred on this area here. This could be the hub of all the activity.
And the main thing about this area from our point of view is we're confident there's been no bonfires, no burning of the rhododendrons, no rubbish pit, so hopefully a clear area for us.
And hardly any trees.
Yeah, and no ticks, I hope.
John Gator's not only having to contend with what's lying underground, but what's on the ground. They're acting as if they own the island. Well, actually, they do.
I can see you're enjoying your lunch, but I'm afraid I'm going to ask if you could move, if you don't mind.
Would we mind moving?
Jo Davis has owned the island for over 20 years. She's keen to safeguard the beauty and tranquility of the place.
Unless you want to do the Geophysics for me.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
You'll probably get better results.
The family has never allowed anyone to explore this close to their house before. In Trench 2, the archaeologists were very excited about the feature they thought might be a furnace. Miles?
Hello.
Your furnace feature looks remarkably square.
It is, isn't it? It's almost exactly 1 metre square.
Why is that?
Well, it is a funny thing, Tony. It's very rare in British archaeology when you dig a feature, are you able to say who dug it, when they dug it and for what reason? And we can say all 3 things here.
Which is?
It was dug about 4 months ago. We know the names of the people who dug it, and we know it's an archaeological test pit.
It's one of Eileen's test
It
pits.
is. We were fooled essentially at the beginning with the fact there's 1 or 2 Iron Age pieces of pottery contained within the fill.
But presumably you've still got a bit of something here.
There is. We've still got this patch of clay, and you can see it in section here. So this is actually something archaeological. So we can still investigate this.
The good news is that there still might be a furnace in this trench, and we've still got time to dig it. 20 metres away, Matt in Trench 3 is looking for an enclosure ditch and has come down onto natural geology that, unusually for Time Team, can be easily seen.
I've got down to the natural in this trench.
This is the yellowy sand we can see.
Yeah, it's yellowy sand. It gets a bit mottled, but it's all the same stuff.
Right.
But we eventually did find a feature. This ditch across the side here, full of this dark material.
It's plunging right down,
Absolutely, yeah. You can see the yellow sand gets to the edge and then straight down like that.
But clearly you haven't got room to move there, have you, really?
No, we haven't even reached the bottom of it yet. It's still going down. So.
Yeah, so I think probably we ought to come, a metre this way?
Yeah, I thought you might say that.
Away from Trench 1, Phil's learning how to make an Iron Age shale armlet. He's chiselling out the basic shape from a lump of shale.
Jake, this is getting awfully fragile. I mean, I think I'm pretty much through there, aren't I?
You're very nearly there, yes. You could tap it off, but I wouldn't. I'd chip it through, because what we don't want is bits of this broken. Well done.
The shale's now ready for turning on the ingenious foot-driven wood lathe, to be shaped by flint tools napped by Phil himself. One area we seem to have ignored is the open hillside. Following geophys results which indicated burning, we put trenches 4 and 5 in here. But they only revealed burnt rhododendrons and stones, neither of which advance our story much. But geophys have persisted and now have more results from this area as well as for the meadow and the lawn, both previously off limits to archaeologists. Are there targets there, and will we be able to dig for them?
Right, here's the last key area, I hope.
Now, so where have you done?
Where are we now?
Show us on here.
We've got the one area here on
that's
the lawn.
where we're sitting now, on the lawn.
And then the one area in the long grass, which we had cut.
Right. Yeah.
And look, ignore these modern responses, but we've got a massive anomalies. These could all be to do with metalworking. And then in the sort of scrub area to the right, other anomalies. I mean, lots of targets we could go for. And look, there is Trench 5. We're well clear of all the modern disturbance now, and we've got a massive responses I'd like to look at.
I think we should certainly do more work based on that, at the bottom of the slope.
We need to keep looking there as well.
Have you done any test pits here? In this area?
No, I mean, this area's always been sort of out of bounds to us as far as digging goes.
So if we were able to persuade Joe that it maybe shouldn't be out of bounds for the rest of today and tomorrow...
Sounds like a job for you.
Can I borrow your geophys? And maybe sometime.
Right. He's done it before, he's good at it.
Let's hope so.
Joe! Has anyone shown you this?
No.
Look, that is very, very interesting.
Really?
Ideally, what we'd like to do is put in a little test pit to see what it is. There's a slight problem. It's on the lawn.
What, here?
Yeah, I'll show you where it is. It's just about here. It would be 1 metre square. In all honesty, there would be a line there for a couple of months, but it would grow over and you wouldn't notice. It would be just the same as the rest of the lawn. Whatever happens, even if we find something, we limit ourselves to that 1 metre. Meg?
Yeah?
Can you guarantee that it'll only be 1 metre square?
Yeah, just 1 metre test pit to be really useful.
Would that be okay?
That'd be really useful.
I suppose so. OK.
God, I love you. There are going to be 3 new trenches, each looking for possible industry indicated by geophys. Trench 6 is on the lawn and Trench 7 in the meadow area nearby. We've opened Trench 8, our final stab at investigating the open hillside, more in hope than expectation. In Trench 1, Phil's line of stones is looking ever more like a building.
We got this cracking front of pitch stones, and they are trending round in an arc. And then, what you can see, about 3/4 of a metre back beyond that, we've literally got a parallel set of stones going round.
I mean, it looks to me like the sort of thing you get at the back of a house. If we could show this was actually some sort of settlement, you know, domestic buildings and so on with domestic debris, that would be a major step forward, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, we've got oyster shells, we've got bone,
So you've got the stuff you find on a house rather than a workshop.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
well, we've got a lot of workshop debris, shell workshop debris, but we do have domestic refuse.
Well, you know, if we can get the post holes and things to go with
That's
it, that's
right.
going to be fantastic, isn't it? Very good.
Trench 2 has had its ups and downs. In the search for a furnace, we found one of Eileen's test pits. But we're still hoping that Miles can deliver something 2,000 years older and a lot less square. Miles, it's changed again. What's this extraordinary round thing?
It's something that's not a test pit. We've got this big sort of oval spread here of baked clay, and all the way around it we've got these pieces of daub, and you can see the wattle marks in there, which is all part of this sort of structural material.
So what do these two things mean?
Well, it's the whole thing, really. I mean, that's come up where we found the slag finds yesterday, where we found the smithing hearth bottom.
Yeah.
We've gone in with the magnet again today, and we've got hammer scale coming up here now in higher proportions. So the association of the smithing hearth bottom, the slag, this wide burnt area, and this structural daub seems to suggest what we could actually have there is a smithing hearth. So we've definitely got smithing here.
The one thing that I'm really interested in was this thing you had your foot on.
Yes,
What's that?
yeah, well, that's can't be too certain at the moment, but it seems that it might well be the base for the anvil.
How often do you come up with these kind of things?
These sites aren't to a penny. If you look across on the mainland, most Arno sites have been badly damaged by ploughing, and I really can't think of any example which is certainly as well preserved as this.
We might be able to get some detail out tomorrow to say not just that it is a furnace, but actually what sort of furnace it is, how it worked, how the actual act of smithing was practiced.
So we're looking at something that's pretty unique.
I would say it is unique, yes, totally.
But is it industrial? And can we find any more of it? And when we get down deep inside it, what else will we find? Join us after the break. Beginning of day 3 in our search for an Iron Age port here at Green Island in Poole Harbour, and our trenches are really starting to come up with the goods. In Matt's trench we've got what appears to be an Iron Age ditch, probably 2nd century BC. This is my favourite trench. We've got a furnace here, we've got bits of a wattle and daub wall, we've got what appears to be part of an anvil, and you want to extend now, don't you, Miles?
God, yes, yeah, we've only got 2/3 of the feature really in our trench. We really need to get all this out and get the whole thing in plan.
Big square here.
Definitely.
But that's not all. 30 metres away in Phil's trench over there, he's got a big line of stones which he thinks might be part of an Iron Age roundhouse. So he wants to extend that trench too. And we're putting in a new test pit over there because of some of John's geophys. We've already put in a test pit here, slap bang in the middle of the lawn because another one of John's spikes. And through the trees, we dug a trench yesterday, which we're still finishing, and we've got a brand new trench there as well, which is a heck of a lot of new trench for day 3. So the pressure is on. Our key targets are the Iron Age industry that went with the port, metal smithing and shale working, as well as evidence of settlement. Next to Phil's roundhouse, he's now found cracking evidence of human occupation. Bone.
The only bone we've had has come from a waterlogged deposit. We've had nothing from the dry soil like this.
Is that because the sand is so acidic
Exactly,
that it's actually destroying the bone?
Yep, it's heathland soils and it degrades everything that's in there.
So these pieces of bone are potentially
Look at them.
really important. Do you know what sort of species it is?
I'm not absolutely certain, but it looks mostly cattle to me.
That's great because that matches exactly the type of bone pieces that we were getting from the waterlogged deposit, which was cattle, sheep, also a bit of duck, but it's all animal that was very good eating.
So that is really good new information about the people that were living here.
In Trench 2, they've drafted in John Gator to check whether they found an anvil and whether there was more than one furnace here.
That's definitely the only polyfired stone.
There's nothing else around that at all that's giving a high reading.
No, average readings.
It is an anvil, but just the one furnace. Chief Apprentice Phil is tied up in his trench, so the apprentice's apprentice has come to lend a hand at our shale works. They're trying to carve the inner core out of the armlet.
It does tend to wander, doesn't
yes,
it?
what I'm trying to do at the moment is get that groove in the right place. So,
how long is it going to take to carry on like this?
I reckon you've got 2 or 3 hours.
Oh my God.
So that's the rest of mixed day sorted then. Back in Trench 1, Dee seems to be breaking all the rules of good trench keeping in pursuit of a huge lump of shale in the section.
Oh my God, it is going, isn't it?
Yeah, it's. I think it's going a bit far really for us to continue doing this.
No, we've got to get it out. I don't care how big a hole you have to do.
You want me to just go for it?
I don't care. We can't afford to lose that big piece. Good, well done. You want to put it straight in there?
Yes, please.
This huge piece of shale would have been the raw material for making an armlet.
God, that is a big old piece, isn't it?
The archaeologists have never before been allowed to dig near the house in the middle of the island. We're hoping that Trench 6 in the lawn and 7 in the meadow will give up more of the island's secrets. Dan, have you found whatever it was that caused the geophysics spike here?
No, not yet, but nowhere near the bottom, I don't think. But look at this.
Ooh, that's Samian,
nice.
presumably.
That's Samian, yep. Late 1st, early 2nd century. That's your import.
Builder Tony, I think whatever you're doing, stop doing it and come down to Trench 1 now, please.
OK, coming. Do you want to have a look?
Let's go.
You know, we were talking about just how well preserved the bone was. Yep. Who would have thought amongst that well preserved bone, 2 fragments, a human skull? Look.
Definitely.
There are the sutures where the plates are all joined together. We're 99% certain that is human skull fragments.
Do you think it was just discarded here, or do you think it could actually be part of a burial?
No, I mean, it's not unusual to get fragments of human remains in Iron Age features.
But was it on the surface or in a cut or anything?
Well, funnily enough, if you look down in the bottom of the hole here, the bones came from right down in the bottom, in that black stuff. Yep. But you notice there is this very, very white-coloured sand, the natural sand. But it looks like we've got a possible ditch or a shallow feature running through the middle of the test pit. It's early days yet, but we could well have a ditch with the human bones in it, predating this stone-built structure.
But Phil, if there's a ditch in front of the wall, does that reduce the chance that we've actually got an Iron Age hut?
Not at all. It may even actually increase it. This could be the foundation slot, the actual foundation trench in which the building stood that fell down, and then at a later stage it got filled up with domestic rubbish and bits of bone.
The bees are busy, the diggers are busy. All over the island, there's the steady scrape of spade on sand. At our own industrial site, after endless grinding of the shale armlet, a critical moment approaches. First apprentice Phil has had to drag himself away from his trench for this crucial operation, breaking the armlet away from the core.
Oh yes! Hey, look, stop! Look, I can see daylight. Look, there it is.
I can see you.
If the armlet's broken, hours and hours of scraping and polishing will all go to waste.
Yes.
Hooray!
Oh, wow.
Do you reckon that fit your hand?
I might get my head through there.
Just a little further down the hillside, Trench 8 was opened to look for the source of a geophys hotspot. It's produced some flint, more shale cores, and uniquely some charred grain, which suggests people were living near here. In Trench 3, Matt has now revealed his Iron Age ditch.
Yeah, really steep sides going right straight down like that.
And did you get any finds or anything from it?
Yeah, a few bits. They've turned out to be mainly late Iron Age, I think.
Yep, I think so. Late Iron Age forms and fabric. Splendid, lovely.
This ditch might have been enclosing a shale works or even some of the huts where the workers lived. But our best evidence of settlement has been Trench 1, which has constantly surprised us. Just when we thought we could confirm that it contained an Iron Age roundhouse, it's delivered yet another twist. And this time it's not altogether welcome.
So has it turned into a roundhouse then, Phil?
No, it's more of a rectangular, straight one, Mick.
Oh, is it? That's not what we wanted at all.
No. Well, look, it's supposed to come around, at least curving round like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's more or less coming through there. What I'm wondering is whether or not this one here, look, is a terminus. Look, see that big white one?
Yes, yeah.
Whether or not that's some sort of a, a wall that stops there.
Yeah.
It don't seem, we haven't got any big stones here, none of the pitch ones on this side.
Right.
But it ain't round.
I mean, one tends to think of sort of Roman if it's straight, and you know, Iron Age means
Well,
round.
that's the sort of golden rule, and it curved Iron Age and Roman straight ones.
Yeah.
It's poor old Victor I feel sorry for.
Why is that?
Well, he drew it as a roundhouse.
So Victor's gone back to the drawing board. But the archaeologists can't agree on what we've found, although it's still possible that it's part of a building and that it's Iron Age. One thing we do know, this could have been the area where workers lived and kept their raw materials. In Trench 2, they desperately want to reveal the Iron Age furnace that was part of the smithy before the end of the day. These strange circular things weren't here last night. What are they, Miles?
Well, it's some sort of structure related to the hearth, so it could be a set of bellows or something.
How would that work?
Well, what we think's going on here is in these two pits here would have some sort of ceramic vessel, and perhaps on top of that, tied around it, a sort of leather bladder or something, which they'd have pumped up and down to force the air into the furnace.
Oh, I thought he meant that they were like post holes and there'd be a big bellows like my mum used to have strapped to it.
Probably not in the Iron Age, no.
Roger, this bit here has always intrigued me.
What we can see there is a dump of fresh clay, which is being used to repair the furnace as it literally melts.
And it leaves behind stuff like we found in there.
Absolutely.
So it's like a little emergency pile in case things start going
wrong. It's a first aid kit for failing furnaces.
So what does this trench tell us about the industry that was going on here?
Well, I mean, the key thing is we've actually found the structures relating to this activity. Before we just had the artefacts, we've had the sort of bits of slag, we've had all kinds of bits of shale in the surface. Now we've actually got a firm evidence of a structure that's showing us that they're smithing this iron, they're actually creating objects. And this is one of the key structures.
It's definitely smithing.
It is.
And you think that the fact that they were doing it on an island is in itself special?
I think what you've got here is a very special process. Remember, this is the Iron Age. Iron's pretty new. It's a novel material, and it's used for really sort of prestigious objects. So I think there's special people doing special things, and they would have been seen as being special by other people.
You're a bit sceptical about this idea of special, aren't you?
I just wonder whether we aren't reading too much into it. I could see that originally the process would look magical, you know, of getting metal out of stone, but we're well on into the Iron Age here. It must have been much better known than it had been.
I agree to an extent. I think what we have to remember is basically most people weren't ironsmiths. Okay, so you know, this is a pretty rare thing to be doing compared to the rest of the people. And what you do basically makes who you are. Who you are is down to what you do.
Was this a place to be treated with awe and wonder, or just a workshop? What's beyond dispute is that Green Island has produced the first structure of an Iron Age furnace ever found in Britain. The iron would have been placed directly on charcoal, fanned by the leather bellows. Nearby, there would have been an anvil for working the metal. An Iron Age smithy might have made tools, such as chisels and hammers, or weapons, such as swords and knives, or just iron bars for trading. After 3 days hard digging, we've found no structural evidence of a port. What we do have are literally thousands of finds, and they tell a story of industrial activity and occupation on this island for 500 years.
What we have got are about 30 bags full like this of pottery, shale, slag.
Far more than we normally get.
Presumably most of this stuff's datable.
Yes, I mean, we start up at this end with the earliest stuff, which is about 250 BC. We go through to about 100. Here we're getting up to about the time of the Roman conquest. But then we've got occupation which goes on into the Roman period. So 2nd century Samian, 3rd century Roman coin, and quite a lot of other finds to go with that as well.
For some inexplicable reason, the piece you're most excited about is this. Why?
It's contemporary with when the jetties were constructed, so it populates the island right back about 250 BC. There were people here with those pots when they were building the jetties.
And you didn't have evidence of that before we came?
Not confirmed evidence such as you're holding in your hand.
We've had a huge amount of this shale, haven't we? And loads of slag. But have we had very much of this imported ware?
We haven't really, Tony, no. We've had about 1% of the total collection.
Which is significantly less than you were finding in your test pits.
Much so, yeah.
So doesn't this rather undermine the idea that we've got a big port here with lots of exports coming in?
No, it doesn't worry me because we're only seeing one part of the total picture. Green Island is part of a much bigger complex, and over on Ower, for instance, there's a very much higher percentage of very exotic material which you just don't get anywhere else.
Mick, what does this whole assemblage tell you?
I think what it's telling us is that we've got to start thinking of Poole Harbour as some sort of, you know, big not only Iron Age industrial centre, but probably another port that's of international importance we hadn't allowed for.
So when I came here looking for a port, it wasn't that there isn't a port here, it's just that it was part of something much bigger.
That's right. I think it's the whole of Poole Harbour itself.
You did give me quite a hard time in those negotiations, didn't you, before you let us dig this test pit?
Not hard enough, really.
Oh, come on, it is beautiful. And we didn't extend it. It's a lovely piece of work, isn't it?
Yep.
And it was worth it because of the finds, which are quite spectacular. There's this whiskey bottle.
Right. That's probably mine.
What about the glucose fizzy drink
Yes.
bottle? But thanks for letting us dig it. And
That's
also,
okay.
thank you for letting us share your lovely island for 3 days. And by way of thanks, we would like to give you this. It's just like the bracelets that they made here 2,000 years ago.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. I should treasure it.
It's amazing to think what was happening on Green Island 2,000 years ago. There may well have been wharves here which have been lost to erosion and rising sea levels. But the island was undoubtedly an industrial site, a leading producer of shale ornaments and iron artefacts. Looking at it today, tranquil and cut off, it seems extraordinary to think that there would have been the hubbub of industry everywhere. It would have been a different world. But there would still have been ticks.